Chapter 555. The surging true energy caused Bufang to be startled and puzzled. He slightly widened his eyes, feeling the true energy in his body boil like boiling water. In his dantian, the true energy whirlpool spun rapidly. The more it spun, the faster it spun. In the center of the whirlpool, a white crystal was condensed. Buzz, a wave of mysterious fluctuations spread out, covering Bufang's entire body. Bufang felt as though his pores were opened at this moment, greedily absorbing the surging energy of heaven and earth. Congratulations to the host for completing the stipulated turnover. Now upgrading. The solemn voice of the system resounded in Bufang's mind. Bufang was slightly dazed, squinting his eyes. Indeed, he had upgraded. Bufang sighed inwardly. The Light Wind Empire's Fang's little store was operating, and the Heavenly Mist City's Cloud Mist restaurant was also operating. Relying on these two restaurants, he had finally reached the stipulated turnover. About 2 months had passed. 2 months had passed, and he had upgraded. It wasn't a long time, but to Bufang it wasn't short either. Above Supreme Being is the Divine Realm. This time I should be able to break through to the Divine Realm, right? Bufang muttered, rubbing his chin. Lord Go, who was gobbling down the porcelain plate of sweet and sour dragon meat ribs, seemed to have sensed something. It raised its head and looked at Bufang meaningfully. In the next instant, it buried its head and began to gorge on the food, the fat on its body shaking. Cluck, cluck, cluck. 88 happily. At first, it didn't dare to eat, but it couldn't resist the fragrance of the dragon blood rice, so it tried to peck at it. However, once it pecked, it couldn't stop, and it couldn't stop. 80's small eyes widened, and it kept pecking. It had never thought that a chicken could be so happy. This delicious rice was much more delicious than the dry herbs and spirit grains in the pill pagoda. After you ate the dragon blood rice, her face looked much better. After receiving enough essence energy to replenish her body, her condition was much better. She held the porcelain plate in her hands and continuously licked it until all the rice grains were clean. When one's essence chi was depleted, the dragon blood rice tasted especially good. You put down the plate and pouted, indicating that she was in a good mood. She really wanted another bowl. Suddenly, Yu's gaze fell on 80, who was not far away, and her eyes instantly lit up. Because she discovered that little eighth was seriously pecking at the dragon blood rice grain by grain. Dragon blood rice, rice, rice. 80 squinted its little eyes and happily pecked. My one grain, chicken life is so happy. All of a sudden, 80's body stiffened. It suddenly felt as if its body was floating. It realized that it was getting further and further away from the dragon blood rice. It couldn't reach it at all. What happened? 80 struggled to shake its body. It's rice. You held 80 and pouted. After rubbing 80's head like Bufang, she grabbed 80's portion of dragon blood rice. She carefully dipped a grain of rice on her finger and handed it to 80. 80 was stunned. It happily pecked a grain of rice. Yu's eyes slightly curved. She rubbed 80's head again. She dipped another grain of dragon blood rice and gave it to 80. 80 happily pecked again. Oh, is this woman feeding a chicken? So loving. She's beautiful and loving. She's much better than that chef who only knows how to rub a chicken's head. After eating another grain of dragon blood rice, 80 excitedly nodded. However, 80's excitement didn't last long. It watched as you narrowed her eyes, grabbed a handful of dragon blood rice, and stuffed it into her mouth. 80 watched as its rice disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. 1 grain for you, 1 grain for me, 1 grain for you, 1 grain for me, you chewed. She stuck another grain of rice into 80's mouth, mumbling unclearly. 80's face was filled with despair. You're lying to a chicken, do you know? This is immoral behavior. Scanning the store, Bufang looked at Yu, who was playing with 80. He let out a deep breath. The breath he exhaled was filled with dense true energy. He turned and climbed the stairs, returning to his room. He closed the door and sat cross-legged on his bed. His body was shaking. In the next instant, he felt as though the true energy in his body was overflowing out of his skin. Bufang had some doubts in his heart. The advancement this time seemed to be completely different from the previous ones. What was going on? The previous advancements didn't have such a big scene. The previous advancements were all done casually, like water. It was never like this, where the reaction was so intense. Could it be because of advancing from Supreme Being to the Divine Realm? Was it because of the leap of a big realm? Perhaps it was because of this reason. Bufang felt as though his body was a little hot. This kind of hot feeling made him feel somewhat uncomfortable. After taking off his clothes, Bufang went into the bathroom. After taking a cold shower, he still couldn't cool down the heat in his body. His head was also a little dizzy. Bufang staggered a few steps and lay down on the bed with his wet hair. He rolled up the quilt and fell asleep. When the morning sunlight shone through the window and fell on Bufang's face, Bufang felt an itchy feeling. His eyelashes fluttered, and he opened his eyes, looking drowsy. The heat from last night seemed to have disappeared in an instant. Bufang felt as though he had never felt so relaxed before. His mind was very clear, and his mental energy seemed to have become much stronger. Bufang slightly squinted his eyes. Everything in front of him seemed to have become very clear, and the lines on the distant wooden table seemed to have become lifelike. Is this the end of the breakthrough? The corners of Bufang's mouth curled up. He was a little curious. His body seemed to have undergone some unusual changes. Bufang sat up from the bed. He calmed his mind and started to check the system panel. Host: Bufang True Energy Cultivation Level 10th Grade Divine Physique Echelon Cooking Talent 4.5 stars Skills Level 2 Meteor Cutting Technique 100 out of 100 Level 2 Big Dipper Carving Technique 100 out of 100 Level 1 Cutting Technique Overlord 13 Blades 6 out of 13 Gourmet Array 1 out of 6 Tools Golden Dragon Bone Kitchen Knife God of Cooking Set Black Turtle Constellation Wok God of Cooking Set God of Cooking Overall Rating Intermediate Chef Cooking Talent has reached a higher level. Cooking skills have become more proficient. A wider world of cooking has opened up for you. You can start to cook functional ingredient. System level Level 2 10 stars. Conversion ratio is at 100%. System reward Functional dish Crazy chili strips, a fragment of the God of Cooking set, 3/3. Congratulations to the host for collecting the fragment of the God of Cooking set. Do you want to exchange it? Exchange. Bufang was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly exchanged for the God of Cooking set. If he could exchange for the God of Cooking set, Bufang naturally wouldn't reject it. Whether it was the Dragon Bone Kitchen Knife or the Black Turtle Constellation Wok, the God of Cooking set had helped Bufang a lot. Exchange in progress. Exchange complete. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the God of Cooking set, Vermilion Robe. The system's solemn voice resounded in Bufang's mind. In the next instant, Bufang realized that something was swaying in front of him. A red dot of light that was like a flame was revolving rapidly in front of him, drawing an array. Within the array, a fluctuation of energy spread out. In the next instant, a chef's robe with alternating red and white stripes floated out of it. Bufang was slightly dazed. This robe was really too beautiful. His entire mind seemed to be attracted by this robe. On that robe, there was a beautiful pattern. The pattern was like a soaring phoenix, and there seemed to be scattered red feathers floating down. Bufang took in a deep breath. Looking at the vermilion robe that was floating in the air, he couldn't help but reach out his hand to touch it. In the next instant, Bufang felt that the vermilion robe was on his body. The neat and tidy vermilion robe made Bufang's figure look even more slender. A row of neat feathers on his chest was like a button that connected the robe. The back of the robe was slender, and there were many feathers sewn on it. When it swayed, it looked like a soaring vermilion bird. Bufang's eyes slightly brightened. He walked in front of the mirror and looked at his much more handsome reflection. He was a little surprised. That vermilion robe made Bufang feel very spirited. Vermilion chef's robe, one of the god of cooking set. It has a strong defensive ability and has a 5-second invincible defense function. Every time it is used, the cooldown time is 3 days. The vermilion chef's robe can strengthen the energy connection between the host and the ingredient. It can increase the host's reaction speed, mental force, and charm. The system gave an analysis of the vermilion robe. However, after listening to it, Bufang's face was filled with a strange expression. The other functions were not bad. That 5-second invincible defense was even more abnormal. But what the heck was that charm enhancement? Touching the vermilion robe on his body, Bufang was very satisfied with its soft touch. It was very comfortable to wear. After all, it was a god of cooking set. It could adjust the temperature, and it could be said to be a must-have at home or on a trip. However, Bufang still had some doubts in his heart. Yesterday, when he broke through, he actually had that kind of symptom. But what was the difference between this and the previous breakthrough? Bufang asked the system about the doubts in his heart. The host has completed the breakthrough of the first major realm. The primary system has reached perfection. Starting to unlock the secondary system. Some information is being adjusted accordingly. What adjustment? Bufang's heart skipped a beat. He felt a little strange. The current system is a secondary system. According to the regulations of the secondary system, the host has to cook a corresponding dish every time he advances. The host also has the authority to open the restaurant's business hours. The system said solemnly. Xiao Bai's combat capability has been upgraded to the peak of the divine physique echelon. The host can enhance the gourmet array. Bufang narrowed his eyes. It turned out that the system had been upgraded. However, after the upgrade, it seemed that the difficulty for him to advance was higher. Bufang pondered for a long time. Overall, the system's upgrade was beneficial to him. However, the test for him had also become stricter. There was a requirement for the advancement, which meant that Bufang might fail the advancement. There were worries and happiness. However, since it was a dish test, as a young man who wanted to stand at the top of the food chain in the fantasy world, he naturally wouldn't have the slightest fear. Bufang touched his chin. The corner of his mouth twitched, revealing a confident smile. He continued to look at the system panel. Suddenly, he was slightly taken aback. This functional dish. What is crazy chili strips? Is it a spicy strip? Chapter 556. Crazy chili strips. It really sounds like chili strips. When Bufang heard this somewhat familiar name, the corners of his mouth curled up. In his previous life, chili strips were a very famous food. Although Bufang rarely ate them, the name still reverberated like thunder in his ears. Feeling the power in his body, wearing the vermilion robe, Bufang felt that his entire body had become extremely relaxed. Waving his fist, the air seemed to tremble as if it was about to shatter. His power had also increased by a lot. Bufang sighed inwardly. Supreme Being and Divine Realm were really different. In his dantian there was only a true energy cyclone. But now, after breaking through to the Divine Realm, a white crystal stone had actually condensed in his dantian. That crystal stone seemed to be condensed by true energy, and dense true energy constantly lingered on it. The crystal stone provided Bufang with a steady flow of true energy, which improved all of his body's qualities. Wearing the vermilion robe, Bufang stretched his body and walked out of the room. He went to the kitchen and prepared to cook and practice his knife skills. Just as he walked downstairs, he saw Xiao Bai standing quietly in front of the kitchen. Today, Xiao Bai seemed to be a little different from the usual Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai's body seemed to be emitting a strange light, which made Bufang slightly freeze. He remembered that the system seemed to have notified him that Xiao Bai's fighting strength had increased to the peak of the divine physique echelon. As expected, his fighting strength had increased, and his entire temperament was different. Patting Xiao Bai's plump belly, Bufang's mouth curled up. He pulled down Xiaopi, who was sleeping soundly on Xiao Bai's head. This fellow seemed to be addicted to sleeping. Bubbles were coming out of his mouth, and his face was blurry. He put Xiaopi on his shoulder. Originally, Xiaopi was a little unwilling. Xiao Bai's head was round, and it was very comfortable to sit on it. However, when this little guy landed on Bufang's shoulder, its tiny eyes quickly opened. It blew bubbles from its mouth, and its numerous legs crawled on Bufang's shoulders. It was bewildered. It seemed to have noticed that Bufang's aura was slightly different from before. That fiery and warm feeling made him squint his eyes in enjoyment. Bufang tilted his head. Looking at Xiao Bai's expression, he found it a little funny. This little fellow must have felt the aura of the vermilion robe on Bufang's body. After all, it was a god of cooking set, so the aura it emitted was naturally extraordinary. Xiaopi seemed to have once again attached itself to Bufang. It lay motionlessly on Bufang's shoulder, as though it was pretending to be dead. Bufang patted Xiaopi's head, turned around, and stepped into the kitchen. He arrived in front of his stove. Green smoke curled around his hand, and the dragon bone kitchen knife instantly appeared in his hand. He twirled the knife, and the knife light flashed. Bufang seemed to have become more skillful and at ease. The dragon bone kitchen knife spun along Bufang's wrist, and it was incomparably dazzling. His other hand shone brilliantly, and he took out the heavy black turtle constellation wok. He placed it on the arena, and Bufang began his daily cooking. With the help of the vermilion robe, Bufang's will became stronger, and he was able to control the spiritual energy in the dishes more smoothly. According to Bufang's estimations, his current mental energy had reached the level of a divine physique echelon expert who had broken through 5 supreme being shackles. Before he broke through, his mental energy, which was amplified by the Shura Tower, was only equivalent to a divine physique echelon who had broken through 3 of the supreme being's shackles. Now, his mental energy was enough to make Bufang's cooking skills even more powerful. Not to mention, his talent for cooking had also increased. It could be said that the current Bufang was much more powerful than before he participated in the Magical Hand Conference. Sizzle, the aroma surged, and a wave of heat assaulted him. Flames soared into the sky, and in a short while, a dense smoke filled the entire kitchen. Bufang carried the dishes out of the kitchen. At the dining table, Blackie and Nethery, the 2 gluttons, had already taken their seat. They were eagerly looking at Bufang, who was walking out of the kitchen. Suddenly, Yu and Black's pupils shrank. They looked at the figure that walked out of the kitchen, and they seemed to be in awe. That figure seemed to be shining brightly, and it was extremely eye-catching. His temperament was gentle, but it was hard for people to forget him. Since when did this kid become so high-profile? Lord Go stuck out his tongue and muttered. That flashy clothes. He had to admit that they were really cool. Lord Go squinted his eyes. He felt a familiar aura from Bufang's clothes, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Since he couldn't figure it out, he stopped thinking about it. Instead, he looked at the piping hot sweet and sour ribs in Bufang's hands with anticipation. Yu was slightly surprised when she first saw Bufang, but in the next moment, her gaze was attracted by the dish in Bufang's hands. After placing the dish in front of Blackie and Yu, the 2 foodies nodded at Bufang and started to dig in. 80 was very pitiful. It fell to the side with a face full of despair. Bufang felt a little strange. He walked over and picked up the little fellow. 80 suddenly felt an aura that made its body and mind happy. It instantly widened its eyes and rubbed its head against Bufang's body. Bufang rubbed the little fellow's head, then turned around and went into the kitchen. He cooked a portion of dragon blood rice and let 80 slowly peck at it. However, 80's pecking was a little frightening. After finishing everything, Bufang opened the bronze door of the restaurant and prepared to start the business. Outside the door, there was already a long line of people. The reputation of the restaurant today couldn't be compared to before. The entire Pill Palace seemed to have heard of the Heavenly Mist City's Cloud Mist restaurant. Countless people flocked to the restaurant. It wasn't just because it was the restaurant of a dark horse chef. More importantly, it was because of the terrifying existences in the restaurant. A terrifyingly fat dog and a beautiful and bewitching woman. This was a special restaurant. It was a restaurant that attracted the attention of countless people. Some people started to line up before the sun rose. They excitedly chatted and laughed as they waited for the restaurant's bronze door to open. When the bronze door let out a heavy creaking sound, everyone became spirited. The restaurant's door was finally going to open. Everyone widened their eyes as they looked at the figure standing at the door. Looking at that figure, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Is that Owner Bu? Why does he feel different from before? This dark horse chef's temperament is so unique. It feels extraordinary. That shirt is so handsome. I wonder where I can buy it. I really want to buy one. After the diners were stunned for a while, they started to chatter. They exclaimed in admiration and looked at Bufang in surprise. Bufang's face was calm. He didn't care about the surprised diners at all. Everyone, line up and come one by one. Please observe the restaurant's order, Bufang said calmly. After saying that, he turned around and entered the restaurant. Inside the restaurant, Yu was holding 80, squinting her eyes and stirring up trouble. She flapped her wings and her small eyes were filled with tears as she stared at 80. As an idealistic chicken, it had to learn how to resist. Go to hell. One for you, one for me. Cluck cluck cluck. It resisted, but the result didn't change. You still stuck a grain of dragon blood rice for it to peck. She grabbed a big handful and stuffed it into her mouth. She ate until the corners of her mouth were stained with rice. Bufang's cooking skills seemed to have improved again. The dragon blood rice was even more delicious. Eating this rice was really a rare pleasure. Stop messing around. Get ready. We're going to open for business. Bufang looked at Yu, who was excitedly snatching 80's dragon blood rice. He was a little speechless. After saying that, he turned around and entered the kitchen. Yu put down 80's porcelain plate with a face full of regret. 80 wanted to cry because there was still a lot of dragon blood rice left on the plate. It was too touched. One by one, the diners stepped into the restaurant. They were incomparably excited and looked around curiously. They came to the restaurant with the intention to broaden their horizons. Even the price of the expensive dishes didn't surprise them. They even felt that it was natural. After all, it was a dish cooked by the dark horse chef of the Magical Hand Conference. What did the price matter? When the fragrant dishes were carried out from the kitchen and placed in front of them, every diner's eyes widened. They were filled with surprise and excitement. After eating a mouthful of the dish, the fragrance circulated in their mouths and their faces became rosy. They simply couldn't stop eating. Delicious! As expected of Owner Bu's dish. It's simply a delicacy. It's much more delicious than that dry fasting pill. It's really delicious. I can't stop eating it. An intoxicated expression appeared on the faces of the diners. They whispered to each other and praised each other. One group of diners came and another group left. The diners in the restaurant were constantly changing. What the F***ck? I finally managed to squeeze my way in. Old Bu. Ever since your restaurant became famous, it has become so difficult to see you. A voice full of complaints rang out. Nangong Wuk, who was sweating profusely, walked into the restaurant. He found a seat and shouted toward the direction of the kitchen. What do you want to eat? You walked in front of him and calmly glanced at him. Nangong Wuk squinted his eyes and said with a face full of smiles, Elder Sister Nethery, your complexion is getting better and better. You didn't reply to his words. She still looked at him expressionlessly. Nangong Wuk curled his lips and ordered a bowl of Buddha jumps over the wall soup. He didn't say anything else. Outside the door, several people walked in. Their silver armor emitted a dazzling radiance and attracted the gazes of countless people. This person was the Han commander from the day before. Haha, Owner Boo, I promised to come and support you yesterday. Here I am. Han Li squinted his eyes and walked in with a smile on his face. With a glance, he saw Blackie, who was sleeping soundly in front of the path understanding tree. Yo, the Lord Go is resting. Bufang slowly walked out of the kitchen. He wore a red and white vermilion robe, and his entire body seemed to emit a different kind of aura. Bufang wiped the water on his hands and looked at Han Li. He calmly said, Since you're here, find a seat and order whatever you want to eat. After saying that, Bufang took a deep breath and turned around to enter the kitchen. Han Li looked deeply at Bufang's back and furrowed his brows. He took off his silver helmet and waved his hand behind him. Take out the spirit pills that I asked you to prepare and offer them to the Lord Go. After giving these instructions, he rubbed his hands and walked toward the Lord Go with a smile on his face. The surrounding customers were all startled. Nangong Wuk, who was chewing on a greasy pig trotter, was also stunned. What is this guy planning to do? Is he planning to use elixirs to bribe the Lord Go? Chapter 557. Han Li held the silver helmet in one hand and waved at the guards behind him. The guards looked at each other and stepped forward. Each of them took out a jade bottle from their spatial spirit tool. The jade bottle was extremely rich, and there seemed to be a flowing luster on it. Lord Go, this is a 4-mark spirit pill. Smell the rich pill fragrance. It's definitely delicious. Han Li picked up a bottle of elixir and moved to the side of Lord Go as he said with a face full of smiles. That's right, his plan was to use elixir to bribe the Lord Go. After he suffered a huge loss yesterday, he carefully studied the chef, Bufang. Honestly speaking, there was nothing special about this chef. Other than the fact that he could cook good dishes, everything else was very ordinary. That cultivation, to Han Li, was simply trash. However, what was scary was not the chef himself, but the black dog and the woman with long, black hair who had been guarding the chef. These two fellows were more ruthless than the other. Not to mention the woman, just the dog that could possibly be at the Divine Soul Realm was enough to make Han Li not dare to let out a fart. Why would a dog at the Divine Soul Realm stay in a restaurant? Could it be because the chef of the restaurant was good at cooking? Wasn't there a saying? If you want to keep a dog, you must first keep its stomach. Could it be that the Lord Go was moved by the delicious food? Thinking of this, Han Li had an idea. Since the Lord Go was moved by the dishes, could he use elixir to move the Lord Go? Of course. Bufang's dishes were very delicious and their effects were also very strong. They were not weaker than ordinary spirit pills. Then, he would use high-grade spirit pills. As a commander at the peak of the divine physique echelon who had broken through 5 of the Supreme Being's shackles, he still had some high-grade spirit pills. Han Li poured out a dark green elixir from the porcelain bottle. That elixir was emitting a dense pill energy and its fragrance was very rich. It attracted the gazes of many diners. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This Commander Han was truly willing to part with his capital. This is a 4-lined blue cloud spirit pill. It's extremely valuable. Commander Han actually intends to feed it to a dog. Nangong Wuk clicked his tongue as he gnawed on the pig trotter. Apart from the 4-lined blue cloud spiritual pill, Han Li had also prepared many elixirs of the same grade. Among them, there was even a 5-lined elixir. Even someone as rich and overbearing as Han Li felt his heart ache. But if these pills could move the Lord Go, then it was totally worth it. Quite a number of people secretly disdained Han Li's flattering manner. This shameless fellow, but no one showed it on the surface. Bufang was not afraid of Han Li, but that did not mean that they were not. After all, Han Li was the commander of the Pill Palace. He led many powerful guards and had great authority in the Pill Palace. He seemed to have been woken up by Han Li's muttering. The Lord Go opened his sleepy eyes and looked at Han Li with some dissatisfaction. Why is it this brat again? Every time he disturbs the Lord Go's sleep, does he want to challenge the Lord Go to a duel? However, the flattering expression on Han Li's face slightly stunned Blackie. Lord Go, these are all for you. Take a look, Han Li said with a smile as he piled the fragrant elixirs in front of the Lord Go. The Lord Go finally understood what was going on. The corners of his dog's mouth curled up as he glanced at Han Li with interest. Is this guy planning to use elixirs to bribe the Lord Go? Do you, the Lord Go, look like a dog that would be bribed by elixirs? Gotcha. With a roll of his tongue, the Lord Go directly picked up a 4-lined blue cloud spiritual pill and put it in his mouth. Crunch crunch, as he chewed on the blue cloud spiritual pill, the Lord Go did not have any expression on his face. Han Li's eyes narrowed as he lightly sucked in a breath of air. Could it be that he succeeded? However, in the next moment, the Lord Go's actions did not stop. He swept the rest of the elixirs into his mouth and started chewing on them. Gulp. All the customers looked at this scene in a daze. Their hearts ached. So many precious elixirs were actually swallowed by a dog just like that. The value of those elixirs was so high. This Han Li was simply wasting God's gifts. Han Li's face was about to blossom with a smile. He did not think that this dog would be so shameless and be so easily bribed by him. He had prepared so many trump cards, but in the end, he did not even use them. As expected, it was a lazy dog that only knew how to eat. Although it was powerful, it still could not change the habits of a dog. Lord Go, look at your status. How can you be so sullen by staying in this small restaurant? Why don't you come to my mansion, and I will let you eat delicious elixirs every day? Han Li's smile was like a flower as he probed. The Lord Go chewed for a while and in the end, swallowed all of those elixirs. The dog's nose twitched as it opened its mouth and let out a burp that was filled with spirit energy. Shooting a glance at Han Li, the Lord Go licked its lips and ignored Han Li. It lay on the ground and narrowed its eyes. The fat on its body shook. Han Li was stunned. Everyone was stunned. What did this mean? You ate so many elixirs, and you want to just let out a burp? In any case, you should at least give a reply. However, after waiting for a long time, the atmosphere in the restaurant became a little awkward. The most terrifying thing was that the atmosphere suddenly became quiet, as expected. This dog wiped its mouth after eating and didn't recognize anyone. Everyone was speechless. Han Li's forehead was filled with black lines. He took a deep breath and his heart suddenly understood. After all, it was a dog at the Divine Soul Realm. How could it be bribed by these ordinary elixirs? He was still too naive. Since that was the case, he would use his trump card. Clap clap clap. Han Li clapped his hands and his eyes became much more serious. Behind him, a guard walked out with a solemn expression. Buzz, a wave of light flashed and a wooden box appeared in the guard's hand. That wooden box was exquisitely carved and there was a mysterious array engraved on it. Opening the wooden box, a dense aura instantly soared into the sky. There were also waves of illusory figures moving about. Looking at the item in the wooden box, everyone's heart froze and their faces were filled with shock. 6-mark spirit pill? Is this Han Li crazy? Does he really think that these elixirs are free? Is he going to feed a 6-mark spirit pill to a dog? This is too much. Commander Han. The diners' faces were filled with pain. Looking at the elixir placed in front of the dog, their hearts trembled. However, under everyone's heartbroken gazes, the Lord Go rolled up the elixir and began to chew. Han Li's heart was also bleeding. A 6-mark spirit pill was not an ordinary elixir. It was extremely expensive. It was even more expensive than the elixir he gave the Lord Go to eat. Even he, Han Li, felt his heart ache. He looked at the black dog continuously chewing and swallowing the elixir. Hanli felt as though his heart was being hollowed out. However, what made him feel even more hollowed out was that, after the black dog swallowed the elixir, it turned its back on him and lay there snoring. Everyone was dumbfounded and speechless. Hanli was also stunned. In the next instant, his anger soared to the heavens. Was this dog playing with him? How could it bully people like this? Let's be reasonable. After eating so many precious elixirs, wouldn't the Lord Go feel guilty if he didn't show Hanli something? That's right. He wouldn't feel guilty. The Lord Go drowsily raised its doggy eyes and glanced at Hanli. It burped and continued to sleep. Hanli was burning with anger. He was played by a dog. Although this dog was awesome, he would really be struck by lightning if he acted like a scoundrel. At this moment, Bufang walked out of the kitchen with a frown on his face. He raised his palm and knocked on the kitchen door. He expressionlessly looked at Hanli and his group of people. What? Is no one ordering? Why are you all crowding around here? Are you trying to cause trouble? The diners were stunned. They looked at each other and hurriedly returned to their seat. They began to happily eat the remaining dishes. Hanli and his guards had awkward expressions on their faces. Should they leave or not? Their priceless elixirs were all eaten by this dog. Were they supposed to leave with their tails between their legs? Although he, Hanli, respected this dog, he wasn't the god of wealth. Cough cough. Owner Boo, I just brought something for the Lord Go. The Lord Go seemed to be very happy eating it. Can you put in a good word for me in front of the Lord Go? Hanli said with a smile. When the diners heard this, they secretly snorted. This Hanli was really shameless. As expected of a man who could climb to the position of the Pill Palace's great commander, Bufang was wearing the vermilion robe. His entire person was majestic. He furrowed his brows and coldly glanced at Hanli. What's there to say? I will count to 3. If you still haven't ordered, leave the restaurant, Bufang lightly said. What the hell? It's fine if this dog doesn't want to admit it. But you, this chef, actually turned your back on me. Did all my investment go to the dog? Hanli's face was like that of a dog. He felt as though his heart was pierced by an invisible arrow. I3. Owner Boo, you and the Lord Go, too. Bufang. Can we be reasonable? 1. Hanli furrowed his brows and wanted to say something. However, Bufang just leaned on the kitchen door and looked at Hanli and his group. Looks like you are really here to cause trouble. Hanli really didn't put Bufang in his eyes. He was just a supreme being. What was there to be arrogant about? Thus, he really didn't care about Bufang's threat. Bufang couldn't possibly ask the Lord Go to throw them out, right? No matter what, this dog had eaten so many precious elixirs. He should at least have some face. Without this dog, could he rely on the Netherworld woman? Even the Netherworld woman was only at the same level as him. He wasn't afraid of her. At most, he would fight one battle. Thus, Hanli's heart relaxed a lot. He still smiled at Bufang and said, Owner Boo, do you know how many priceless elixirs I just paid? You were the one who wanted to feed the dog. Are you blaming me? Bufang said. Hanli was stunned. In the next instant, a trace of anger appeared in his eyes. You what you? Xiao Bai, what should we do if someone causes trouble? Bufang was still leaning on the door. He glanced at Hanli before turning around and speaking to the kitchen. Hanli was taken aback. The customers in the store were also taken aback. Xiao Bai's battle prowess was only comparable to a divine physique echelon expert who had broken through 2 supreme being shackles. What was the point of Owner Boo calling him out? Shouldn't he be asking the Lord Go to use his claws? Bufang's decision really surprised them. However, just as Bufang finished speaking, a wave of energy rippled out from the kitchen. Buzz, a figure slowly poked his head out of the kitchen. His purple eyes flickered with brilliance. He turned and looked at Hanli, who had a fearless expression on his face. Troublemaker, you will be stripped as an example to others. Chapter 558. Xiao Bai's figure walked out of the kitchen and his huge body stood in the middle of the store. His purple eyes flickered as he looked at Han Li. Everyone was stunned as they stared blankly at Xiao Bai. No one would have thought that Bufang would actually let Xiao Bai make a move. Was Owner Bu an idiot? Although this puppet was strong, how could it defeat Han Li, who had broken through 5 Supreme Being shackles? They were simply not on the same level. Stripping? If he couldn't even defeat his opponent, how could he strip him? Han Li had specially investigated Bufang and had long heard about this puppet. However, he really didn't place this puppet in his eyes. In the entire store, other than the Lord Go, only the Netherworld woman could make him feel some fear. Owner Bu, isn't stripping a little too much? Han Li smiled as he looked at Bufang. The corners of his mouth slightly curled up. Bufang expressionlessly glanced at him and patted Xiao Bai's stomach. Xiao Bai's eyes immediately lit up and he walked toward Han Li step by step. After the system's upgrade, Xiao Bai's battle prowess had become even more valiant. His body was also filled with a terrifying pressure. That pressure caused the hearts of the surrounding customers to slightly jump and they felt their hairs stand on end. Owner Bu, let's talk things out. Don't fight. The two of you block that puppet for me. As Han Li spoke, he ordered the guards behind him to take action. After all, the Lord Go had eaten his elixir. He probably wouldn't make a move for such a small matter. Thus Han Li was not worried. His guards should be able to deal with a puppet that could fight against an expert with 2 or 3 Supreme Being shackles. The 2 guards behind him received the order. They looked at each other and released the aura in their bodies. What was there to fear about a mere puppet? Nangong Wuk picked up a chicken claw and gnawed on it. The taste of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup made him swallow his saliva. Today's Buddha jumps over the wall soup was especially delicious, and he couldn't stop eating it. Bufang, who was wearing the vermilion robe, looked very spirited. He stood straight and straightened his back as he looked at the 2 guards who were slowly approaching Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai's purple eyes flickered. Suddenly, the purple light in his eyes brightened, and his figure disappeared from his spot. The air seemed to be compressed, emitting a faint rumbling sound. In the next moment, the 2 guards felt their bodies being bombarded by a powerful force. Even if he wanted to dodge, it would be difficult. What was going on? The 2 guards were instantly dumbfounded. They subconsciously raised their heads and saw that their necks had been grabbed by a huge hand. That ice-cold texture caused a chill to run down their spines. One of the guards was taken aback. In the next moment, the expression in his eyes fluctuated intensely, and his whole body trembled. Troublemaker! You will be stripped as an example to others. Xiao Bai's mechanical voice resounded, and it was like a demonic note reverberating in the guard's ears. The guard wanted to resist, but he couldn't break free from that huge hand. He was dumbfounded. Wasn't it said that this puppet could only resist experts who had broken through 2 of the Supreme Being's shackles? Why did this puppet give him a pressure that wasn't any weaker than Commander Han's? What was going on? Did this puppet become a spirit? Rip! Under the dumbfounded gazes of all the customers, a crisp sound resounded. The 2 guards were directly thrown out of the store by Xiao Bai. While they were still in the air, the armor on their bodies shattered at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the fragments scattered all over the ground. A shining white body appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Nangong Wuk's eyes widened, and with a crunching sound, he crushed the chicken claw in his mouth. 80 clucked, and its small eyes widened as it flapped its wings. Everyone was in an uproar. Bang! 1 sound, 2 sounds. The 2 guards landed outside the store, and the armor on their bodies shattered into pieces. The 2 of them struggled to get up from the ground, and they covered their lower bodies with their hands. Their faces were flushed, and their eyes were filled with shame and indignation. This puppet, it was indeed worthy of its name of the clothes-stripping demon. The 2 guards were indignant and indignant. They didn't prepare any clothes in their spatial spirit tool. It was filled with elixirs, medicinal ingredients, and precious treasures. Who the hell would put clothes in their spatial spirit tool? Moreover, they didn't expect that even with their cultivation, they would still be stripped naked. Moreover, the armor they were wearing had a magic array engraved on it, and it could be considered a type of spirit tool. Yet, it was still easily torn apart by the puppet. This puppet was really poisonous. Feeling the scorching gazes of the surrounding people, the faces of the two guards turned the color of pig liver. They couldn't wait to leave. Han Li's face was lifeless. What just happened? Why was it different from what he had expected? How could that puppet tear off the clothes of his two guards so easily? Owner Bu, you're going a little overboard. Han Li's eyes turned cold, and he looked at Bufang with a chilly gaze. However, in the next instant, the puppet's purple eyes landed on his body. Han Li furrowed his brows and put on his headband. His aura suddenly rose. After all, he was an expert who had broken through 5 Supreme Being shackles. When he became serious, everyone in the store could feel a wave of pressure. Xiao Bai's eyes flickered, and his huge fists fiercely smashed together. In the next instant, the purple in his eyes turned gray. Troublemaker, you will be stripped as an example to others. A mechanical voice rang out. In the next instant, Xiao Bai charged toward Han Li. Han Li sneered. As the commander of the Pill Palace, if it wasn't for the fact that this Lord Go was in existence at the Divine Soul Realm, he would have already razed this store to the ground. How could he allow this puppet to be so rampant? Strip? Watch as this commander peels off your iron skin. Han Li coldly said and was about to make his move. Lord Go, who was lying on the ground, yawned and lazily opened his eyes. He glanced at Han Li and curled his doggy lip. As he breathed, he secretly snorted. Han Li was in high spirit. Facing a puppet, he didn't have the slightest bit of fear. He believed that with his strength, he would definitely be able to capture it easily. With an explosive roar, he was like a soaring dragon attacking. Suddenly, his body stiffened. In his ears, a cold snort that sounded like the morning bell suddenly exploded. His entire body froze on the spot after this cold snort. Han Li's eyes shrank. His body seemed to be covered in ice, and he couldn't move. He turned his head with difficulty and looked behind him. He saw Lord Go lazily yawning. Don't be like this. Lord Go, you ate my elixir. Han Li felt very wronged. However, in the next instant, he felt even more wronged. A ripping sound rang out. A huge palm landed on his body, lifting him up. In the next instant, his bright and beautiful silver-white armor was ruthlessly ripped off by Xiao Bai. Clang! The armor fell to the ground, and Han Li also fell to the ground. His shining white skin was instantly exposed to the air. So infuriating! If it wasn't for Lord Go's snort, how could a mere puppet tear off his clothes? Han Li's eyes widened in anger. His anger surged as he glared at Lord Go. This fat dog. Not right. After eating so many of his precious elixirs, it actually wanted to mess with him. This time, his mood was simply like a dog's **T. Han Li crawled up from the ground, his entire body trembling. He picked up the scattered armor on the ground and used it to cover his embarrassing spot. Then, he gave Bufang a deep look and clenched his teeth as he left. Looking at Commander Han Li's shining white but disappearing from their line of sight, the diners were all shocked to the point that they couldn't think of anything else. Everyone was in an uproar. Xiao Bai's eyes regained their purple color. He raised his fan-like palm and scratched his head. Bufang nonchalantly glanced at the spot where Han Li disappeared, then turned to the diners and said, "All right, continue to line up for business." Han Li's matter was just a small interlude. As for Han Li using elixirs to bribe Lord Go, Bufang only called him a retard in his heart. Was the Lord Go someone who could be bribed by elixirs? To Lord Go, what was the difference between elixirs and jelly beans? If one wanted to bribe Lord Go, they had to use sweet and sour ribs. What happened in the store quickly spread out. Right now, the Cloud Mist restaurant was the center of attention of the entire Heavenly Mist city. Many people were staring at it, waiting for something big to happen. As a matter of fact, the news of Commander Han being stripped naked in the Cloud Mist restaurant and fleeing in a sorry state instantly spread throughout the entire Heavenly Mist city. This time, Han Li became the laughingstock of the Heavenly Mist city. As the diners changed, Bufang saw many familiar faces. Several grandmasters of alchemy came to the store to eat a few dishes. These old fellows were now completely reduced to gluttons. Ever since they tasted the delicacies cooked by Bufang on the stage, it was as if they were addicted and could not stop eating. Among them, Grandmaster Gu He ate the most. In just a few days, Grandmaster Gu He's face had gained a lot of flesh. This time, Xiao He and Shimen Xian came to the store with completely different feelings. Shimen Xian was still fine, but Xiao He was overwhelmed with emotions. In his heart, he had already determined that Bufang was the hidden Dragon Royal Court's Valley of Gluttony's world traveler. With his noble status, he had to build a good relationship with him. Thus, these few days, he came to the store every day to eat. As for his original purpose of coming to Heavenly Mist City, he had completely forgotten about it. Compared to the Valley of Gluttony's world traveler, his purpose of coming to Heavenly Mist City was naturally nothing. However, he would never have guessed that Bufang was really not the Valley of Gluttony's world traveler. The head judge had arrived. This time, he brought news about the finals of the Magical Hand Conference. However, Bufang did not listen to the news and directly said, "Finals? I'm not going. It's boring." Bufang expressionlessly rejected. There was no crystal reward for the top 3 in the finals. To Bufang, it was not attractive at all. Elixirs as a reward? To Lord Go, elixirs were like jelly beans. To Bufang, they were no different from jelly beans. Wasting his business hours to participate in the competition for jelly beans would make Bufang very sad. When the head judge heard this news, he was completely dumbfounded. Why did he have to give up again? He had already fought his way to the finals. A little longer wouldn't make a difference, right? However, the reply that Bufang gave him was still to give up. The head judge was not willing to give up. As the biggest dark horse in this Magical Hand Conference, he hoped that Bufang would be able to complete the entire competition and even fight for the championship. Although this hope was very slim, as his opponent was Elixir King Mu Bai, everyone had hope, right? What if he succeeded? Owner Bu. If you don't like elixirs, you can exchange them for crystals. The judges will definitely agree to this request of yours. The head judge gritted his teeth and said seriously to Bufang. When Bufang heard this, his eyes lit up. He turned around and looked at the head judge. You should have said that I could exchange them for crystals. I will participate in the finals. The head judge looked at Bufang with a speechless expression. Owner Bu, where is your integrity? I never thought that you would be like this, Owner Bu. Chapter 559. Within the majestic pill tower of Heavenly Pill City, there was a cultivation room with a heavy bronze door. Mysterious fluctuations continuously spread out. After a long time, the fluctuations dissipated and the entire room returned to its original state of tranquility. In the next instant, the bronze door was slowly pushed open. The heavy creaking sound resounded in everyone's ears, causing many people in the pill tower of Heavenly Pill City to involuntarily turn their heads to look in that direction. From within the door, a figure slowly walked out. He was dressed in a green robe and his face was handsome. His eyes seemed to be shining with a bright light. When many people saw this figure, they couldn't help but suck in a deep breath. Their eyes revealed a fanatical look. It's Senior Brother Mu Bai. Senior Brother Mu Bai has come out of seclusion? Is he going to Heavenly Mist City to participate in the finals of the Magical Hand Conference? Don't you guys feel that Senior Brother Mu Bai's spirit, energy, and soul seem to be different? The alchemists in the Pill Tower of Heavenly Pill City were all amazed. In their eyes, the current Mu Bai seemed to be emitting a dazzling radiance. It was extremely eye-catching. Moreover, the current Mu Bai was very different from the Mu Bai of the past. At this moment, Mu Bai gave off an aura of sharpness. It was a conviction of wanting to win, a conviction that would make a person even stronger. In the past, Mu Bai always gave off a lazy aura. Regarding this, the crowd wasn't surprised. After all, tomorrow was the finals of the Magical Hand Conference. Senior brother Mu Bai's opponent was the strongest dark horse who had been triumphant all this time. A chef who didn't refine elixirs but specialized in cooking. He was a mystical chef. How many talented alchemists had fallen under his cauldron? Whether it was Sorceress and Sheng or the crazy Xiongshi, or even the pillar of Heavenly Shine City, Mao Shi, they were all famous young geniuses in the Pill Palace. Before competing with that chef, everyone was very optimistic about them. However, the result was a ruthless slap in everyone's face. The result was completely out of everyone's expectations. Today, no one dared to underestimate that chef. Even if the next one was Pill King Mu Bai, it would still be the same. Because no one dared to guarantee that Mu Bai would definitely win against that chef. No one knew what kind of dish the chef would bring out this time. Will senior brother Mu Bai's furnace explode? Mu Bai was also brimming with fighting spirit. This was the first time he had met an opponent who could make his blood boil. Although the other party was not an alchemist, the pressure he felt was even greater than that of an alchemist. That's why it's interesting, isn't it? Mu Bai's mouth twitched. He took a deep breath and slowly took a step forward. The entire floor seemed to shake violently. Within the shadows, Mu Bai's figure completely emerged. Everyone was dumbfounded as they looked behind him. On Mu Bai's back was a heavy black pill furnace. Mu Bai was carrying the heavy pill furnace on his back as he walked out of the cultivation room step by step. There was an excited smile on his face. Tianyao City. In the Pill Tower's cultivation room, two figures sat opposite each other. In the next moment, a silhouette trembled and slowly opened his eyes. The dim cultivation room seemed to have lit up at this moment. The figure stood up. Surprisingly, he was quite slender. His head of pale white hair hung down to his waist. "Teacher, your disciple will set off now," the white-haired lady said to the elder who was sitting cross-legged in front of her. The elder's wrinkled face moved for a moment. In the next moment, he nodded his head. "Go. Go and amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Let everyone remember your name." The white-haired lady nodded her head. With her hands clasped behind her back, she walked out of the cultivation room. As she walked out of the cultivation room, her cold face was exposed to the air. She wasn't very beautiful, but she was full of heroic spirit. "After hiding for 3 years, I will definitely amaze the world with a single brilliant feat this time. I will be the champion. No matter if it's Mu Bai or Chef. No one can stop me." The lady let out a deep breath. Her head of white hair fluttered in the wind. It had been a week since the last match, and the central square had completely recovered under the restoration of the array. The arena was set up and the audience seats were built around the entire arena. The audience seats were densely packed and it was obvious that they had prepared many seats for the finals. Tomorrow was the day of the finals of the Magical Hand Conference. The competition that had been going on for so long was finally coming to an end. However, no one's heart could calm down. The entire Pill Palace was in an uproar. This year's Magical Hand Conference was really too attractive. First of all, Mu Bai's existence was eye-catching. He had countless supporters and also countless supporters. The number of people who came to watch him was definitely not a small number. As for Bufang, who was the dark horse chef that the people of the Pill Palace talked about, he had also set off a wave of excitement in the Pill Palace. Almost everyone was talking about this dark horse chef. No one would have thought that the fellow who was previously looked down upon would actually defeat so many outstanding opponents and enter the finals. No one would have thought that this dark horse chef would be able to clash with Mu Bai in the finals. Bufang's identity was no longer a secret to the people of the Pill Palace. The reputation of the Cloud Mist restaurant had also spread throughout the entire Pill Palace. Everyone knew that there was a Cloud Mist restaurant in the Heavenly Mist City. The owner of the restaurant was the Dark Horse of the Magical Hand Conference. The waitress of the restaurant was a valiant woman who could kill experts from the ancient Shura city with a flick of her finger. Oh, there was also a dog in the restaurant. It was a fat dog that even Commander Han of the Pill Palace didn't dare to utter a single word. This strange combination had spread throughout the entire Pill Palace in a short period of time. Thus, the clash between Bufang and Mu Bai attracted the attention of almost everyone in the Pill Palace. As for the third competitor, no one paid much attention to her. It was said that she was an alchemist from Heavenly Shine City. In the eyes of the crowd, this alchemist had entered the finals through T luck. 2 bright moons hung high in the sky. Silver rays of light shone down, covering the entire central plaza, causing the plaza to emit a cold aura. In the audience stands, there were already a few people who had found their seat. These people had come early to watch the competition. The finals were definitely going to be very popular. If they came early to reserve their seats, they could save a lot of time waiting in line. Many people couldn't wait to watch the final battle. Today's business will end here. Everyone, please go back. I still have to participate in the finals tomorrow, so we will not be open for business tomorrow. Bufang wore his red and white vermilion robe as he walked out of the kitchen. His gaze landed on the group of people who were still queuing up as he spoke calmly. Although the customers felt that it was a pity, they didn't think too much about it. It was because of Bufang's words that he was going to participate in the finals of the Magical Hand Conference tomorrow. The customers naturally knew about the competition tomorrow, and they definitely wouldn't miss out on it. Owner Bu, rest well. Do your best tomorrow. Try your best to get rid of that Mu Bai. Owner Bu, you must do your best tomorrow and fight for our Heavenly Mist City's honor. We have high hopes for you, Owner Bu. Do your best. The customers left one after another. Every person who left gave Bufang enough encouragement, causing the expression on Bufang's face to become slightly gentler. After waiting for all the customers to leave, Bufang closed the bronze door. He patted his chest and lightly exhaled. The vermilion robe was very comfortable and it didn't make Bufang feel too tired. However, the vermilion robe could block the physical fatigue, but it couldn't block the mental fatigue. After continuously operating for an entire day, Bufang felt a little tired. In order to quickly increase his strength, Bufang extended his business hours by 4 hours. Basically, Bufang spent the entire day cooking in the kitchen. Pulling a stool and sitting down, Bufang heaved a sigh of relief and happily curled up. You also expressionlessly sat beside Bufang and looked at him. Blackie, who was far away, also raised its dog head and looked at him with a playful expression. Bufang instantly rubbed his hair and the corners of his mouth curled up. He knew what these two gluttons wanted to do. Bufang picked up 80, who was running around in the store. This little fellow seemed to be enjoying itself in the restaurant and had forgotten about home. It clucked non-stop. Rubbing the little fellow's head, Bufang placed 80 in front of you. Bufang then turned around and entered the kitchen to start cooking sweet and sour ribs and dragon blood rice. As he cooked, he pondered. Tomorrow was the finals. According to the chief judge, as long as he could become the champion, he would be able to get enough crystals as a reward. To Bufang, this was a good thing. He had asked the system before and found out that the crystals that he could exchange for could be added to the business rewards to increase Bufang's true energy level. What dish should I cook in the finals? Bufang furrowed his brows and pondered. The chief judge had explained to him how the finals would be evaluated. The evaluation of the finals would not only be based on the evaluation of the 5 judges, but there would also be the evaluation of the 500 selected audience members. The evaluation of the alchemists would be based on the audience members' evaluation of the finished elixirs. Since Bufang was a chef, his requirement was for the audience members to taste his dishes before they could give their evaluation. Thus, Bufang had to cook a lot of dishes the next day. What dish should he choose the next day? Bufang rubbed his chin and pondered. As he pondered, he carried the cooked dishes out of the kitchen and placed them in front of Nethery and Blackie, who were starving and thirsty. As for Adi, he prepared another portion. Looking at the three gluttons eating with relish, Bufang couldn't help but smack his lips. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. A dish seemed to have flashed through his mind. If he used that dish in the competition tomorrow, it would definitely be interesting. Bufang narrowed his eyes and the corners of his mouth curled up. Xiaopi lay on Bufang's shoulder and spat out a bubble. Its face was filled with confusion as it was patted by Bufang. Xiaopi, tomorrow's finals will depend on you. The corners of Bufang's mouth curled up. He turned his head to look at Xiaopi and revealed a meaningful smile. Crystal's reward. He was here. Chapter 560. The next morning, the sun was bright and beautiful. The warm sunlight shone down from the sky and enveloped the entire store. Today, there were only a few customers queuing up in front of the store. Only a few customers who were loitering around would occasionally raise their eyes to look into the store. With a creaking sound, the bronze door of the store was opened and a figure slowly walked out of the store. Bufang wore a vermilion robe with alternating red and white stripe. The red feathers on his chest fluttered slightly, and the feathers on his robe fluttered in the wind. It was a dazzling sight. The sunlight shone down and landed on the vermilion robe, causing it to emit a scarlet radiance. It was dazzling and mesmerizing. Bufang squinted his eyes and looked at the dazzling sunlight. The corners of his mouth curled up and he raised his palm to pat Xiaopi, who was beside him. That little fellow was still lying on his shoulder and spitting out bubbles. You wore a black robe and her long black hair hung down. Her sparkling feet stepped on the ground and she followed behind Bufang. Bufang looked at her and didn't say anything. The two of them walked out and the bronze door of the store was closed. Today was the day of the finals of the Magical Hand Conference, and it was the focus of the entire Pill Palace. When Bufang walked out of the restaurant, the people who were originally wandering outside the restaurant spread out excitedly. They spread the news that Bufang had already set off. Bufang didn't care about it. His vermilion robe made him feel as though his body was floating. As he walked on the streets of Heavenly Mist City, there were towering metal buildings on both sides of the street. Many people stuck their heads out of the buildings and looked at Bufang's figure. There were even people shouting and cheering for Bufang. Bufang nodded his head indifferently and continued walking. Currently, the Cloud Mist restaurant's reputation was like a thunderclap reverberating in the ears of the entire Heavenly Mist City. There was basically no one in the Heavenly Mist City who didn't know about the Cloud Mist restaurant. There was also no one who didn't know about the Dark Horse chef, Owner Bu. As Bufang walked forward, you followed beside him. Ever since the previous incident, you paid more attention to Bufang. Basically, she would follow him whenever he went out. Once something happened to Bufang, her dragon blood rice would be ruined. This is not what you want. Passing through a forest of tall buildings and walking along a small path, Bufang and Yu's eyes were covered and enshrouded by a blazing white light. They could not see anything clearly at all. It was a long while later before his eyes became familiar with this light. A clamor that seemed to charge straight into the clouds instantly resounded in his ears. An uproar filled the entire central square. Bufang and Yu stood at the entrance and looked at the shocking scene in amazement. The central square seats were filled with tens of thousands of people. The seats were filled with people, and the sight of it was frightening. When the audience saw Bufang walk in from the entrance, they immediately roared in excitement. All sorts of cheers resounded. Owner Bu, do your best. The championship belongs to you. Owner Bu, use your delicacies to defeat everyone. You are invincible. The dark horse chef will be a dark horse all the way to the end. Let the people from the other pill cities witness the power of our Heavenly Mist City. Most of these people were citizens of Heavenly Mist City. They were very excited because this was the first time that a participant from Heavenly Mist City had entered the top 3 of the Magical Hand Conference. Moreover, it was a home game. Naturally, the crowd was very noisy. The people of Heavenly Mist City naturally hoped that the participant from Heavenly Mist City would win. This was a feeling of belonging, and everyone in the audience cheered with all their might. Of course, there were also people from other pill cities in the audience seat. Their faces were a little ugly. However, they did not retreat. Amidst the ocean-like cheers, they shouted encouragement for their pill city's participants. Bufang was a little dazed when he saw this. However, he was very calm. He was a man who was going to become the god of cooking in this fantasy world. How could he be frightened by such a small scene? He was even more calm. Other than eating, this woman didn't care about anything else. Bufang rubbed Xiaopi, who was so frightened that she straightened her back. Then, he brought you into the resting area. When they entered the resting area, there were already 4 people waiting there. Bufang was slightly startled. He was familiar with these 4 people. Nangong Wuk gave Bufang a thumbs up and said, "Old Bu, as long as you can win the championship, I, Nangong Wuk, will order all the dishes in your restaurant." Nangong Wan rolled her eyes at Nangong Wuk. Then, she turned to look at Bufang. Her eyelashes trembled slightly. She looked at Bufang and said, "Owner Bu, you can do it." Nangong Wan really didn't expect that Bufang would actually reach this stage. He was just a chef. A chef had actually created a bloody path in the Magical Hand Conference, a place where alchemists could move unhindered. Nangong Wan's mind was in a trance. This was the first time she felt that her faith had collapsed. In the past she thought that alchemists were awesome. However, ever since she met Owner Bu, she realized that alchemists were nothing. Sorceress and Xing looked at Bufang with a charming smile on her face. The towering peaks on her chest trembled slightly. She leaned forward and moved closer to Bufang. Then, she asked curiously, "Owner Bu, what dish are you planning to cook for the finals? Can you give me a little hint?" Sorceress and Xing's eyes almost lit up as she stared at Bufang. She was the same as Nangong Wan. After interacting with Bufang, she completely changed her perception of alchemists and chefs. It turned out that chefs could also be so awesome. Sorceress and Xing even had some interest in chef. "You will see it soon." Bufang glanced at her and said calmly. And Xing froze for a moment and pouted. The last person was also the one that surprised Bufang. It was Yang Meiji, the former owner of the Cloud Mist restaurant. Yang Meiji's mood was the most complicated among the 4 of them. She didn't expect that the promise that Bufang had given her would be fulfilled so quickly. Bufang said that he would make the Cloud Mist restaurant flourish and that he wouldn't let it decline in his hands. In the end, he did what he said. The current Cloud Mist restaurant was famous in the entire Heavenly Mist City and even in the Pill Palace. This was beyond her imagination. It was like a fantasy. Thus, Yang Meiji's mind was a little excited. She just looked at Bufang and couldn't say anything. Bufang knew that she was excited, so he just patted her shoulder and didn't say anything. Looking at the big woman's excited expression, the others felt that it was a little strange. "Good luck. You will be the champion." Yang Meiji was so excited. Looking at Bufang's back as he walked forward, she clenched her fists and cheered him on. Bufang was a little surprised. He paused for a while and then continued to walk forward. The central square that was originally in ruins had been completely restored. On the new arena, there wasn't a bronze platform, but a golden one. Under the sunlight, the golden platform emitted a dazzling radiance that dazzled people's eyes. It made the audience even more excited. Bufang came to the arena. He was actually the first one to arrive, which surprised him a little. All of a sudden, a tremor came from the entrance. The ground seemed to be shaking. A figure slowly walked out from the entrance. It was a figure carrying a giant alchemy furnace on his back. The alchemy furnace was pitch black, and mysterious patterns were carved on it. Mu Bai's face was handsome, and he wore a green robe with a gentle smile on his face. He slightly bent his waist, carrying the giant alchemy furnace on his back. Every step he took shook the ground. When the audience saw this scene, they all cried out in surprise. They were extremely excited. Elixir King Mu Bai was almost guaranteed to be the champion in this magical hand conference. His alchemy skills were too strong, and his talent was too monstrous. No one could compare to him. However, the unexpected appearance of a dark horse chef had changed the situation that was already set in stone. And now, Elixir King Mu Bai was also serious. He had no choice but to be serious. The pressure that Bufang gave him was too great. It's the 9-star furnace. Oh my god! He even took out such a legendary alchemy furnace. 9-star furnace? Isn't that the alchemy furnace that the Pill Palace's master used before? I heard that Mu Bai is highly appreciated by the Pill Palace's master. He even received pointers from the Pill Palace's master. It seems like it's true. The audience's eyes widened. Looking at Mu Bai, who was stepping onto the arena step by step, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. The 9-star furnace was the alchemy furnace that the Pill Palace's master used. It was extremely beneficial to alchemy. He even took out this kind of alchemy furnace. This Mu Bai was determined to be the champion. Dong! A loud sound rang out. Mu Bai placed the alchemy furnace on the arena, causing the entire arena to shake. Mu Bai let out a long breath and loosened his muscles. He smiled at Bufang and nodded his head. Bufang looked at the alchemy furnace and narrowed his eyes. He returned Mu Bai's gaze. The aura of this alchemy furnace was extraordinary. This Mu Bai really had the ability. It seemed like this match was going to be a tough battle. However, Bufang was not that nervous. This was because his dish this time was not simple. Furthermore, he had the help of Xiaopi. Bufang was very confident. There were 3 contestants in this finals. They would fight for the championship together. They would be ranked according to the audience's ratings. There were 3 golden platforms on the arena. Hence, there should be 1 more contestant. The audience naturally did not pay much attention to this last contestant. In the eyes of the audience, this last contestant was just a bystander. The focus of this finals was on the Dark Horse Chef and Elixir King Mu Bai. It did not matter who the 3rd contestant was. Tap, 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 the quiet sound of footsteps rang out. At the entrance, a graceful figure slowly walked over. Very quickly, a figure entered the audience's eyes. It was an alchemist with a beautiful figure but an ordinary appearance. However, that eye-catching head of white hair attracted many people's attention. The 3rd contestant was actually a woman? A woman with a head of white hair? Many of the audience were slightly stunned. Looking at that figure, they suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. This woman's figure was somewhat familiar. Mu Bai's green robe swayed in the wind and his hair fluttered. He turned his head to look at the 3rd contestant who was leisurely walking over. That woman with a head of white hair. His pupils instantly shrank, and his entire body stiffened. It's her! Mu Bai sucked in a deep breath, and his face became somewhat solemn. That woman walked up the arena. Her 3,000 strands of white hair swayed in the wind. A terrifying pressure spread out from that woman's body, causing everyone's heart to skip a beat. No one spoke a word. Mu Bai and Bufang also felt this pressure. Bufang furrowed his brows. That woman turned her head to look at him, and her ordinary face revealed a smile that was filled with meaning. This year's most popular dark horse chef? Very good. I love to step on a dark horse to get to the top. After saying this, the white-haired woman turned her head to look at Mu Bai, whose body was tensed up from afar. We meet again. This time, you won't be so lucky, the woman said softly. However, the audience felt a wave of killing intent. Mu Bai's pupils shrank and he softly muttered, "White Demon Jiangling? That's right. It's me. Are you guys prepared to be crushed?" The white-haired woman smiled. She combed her white hair, causing it to flutter. Chapter 561. White Demon Jiangling. This was a name that most of the audience were unfamiliar with. The last time this name appeared was 3 years ago. At that time, White Demon Jiangling's alchemy skills were already extremely high. She was a strong competitor for the championship of the Magical Hand Conference. It was a pity that there were too many monstrous geniuses that year. Even someone as strong as Jiangling only managed to obtain the 4th place. At that time, Mu Bai had yet to reveal his outstanding talent. At that time, he wasn't called an Elixir King. However, Mu Bai still had a deep impression of White Demon Jiangling. That was because Mu Bai was defeated in a battle with White Demon Jiangling. That was a battle that he would never forget. That was a humiliation that was etched deep in Mu Bai's memory. He remembered this humiliation deeply and had always wanted to avenge it. It was a pity that after White Demon Jiangling lost to Mu Bai Sr., she completely disappeared. She disappeared for 3 years. Today, she actually appeared again and stood in the finals of the Magical Hand Conference. A look of excitement appeared on Mu Bai's handsome face. She was still as arrogant as ever. Mu Bai looked at White Demon Jiangling, who was combing her hair, and the battle intent in his eyes became even more intense. Bufang didn't care because he didn't know who this arrogant woman was. There were many people who were arrogant in front of him. Who did this woman think she was? Following the woman's words, the entire arena instantly became noisy. It was extremely lively. The audience cheered and they were extremely excited as they waited for the start of the competition. In the sky, the warship rumbled and the 5 grandmasters appeared. The head judge also gracefully stepped onto the arena and stood in the middle. Today, the head judge was dressed in grand attire. Because this was the finals, it was the most important match of the Magical Hand Conference. Everyone was extremely serious and focused. After the 3 contestants were in position, the head judge began to seriously read out the rules of the finals. There weren't many rules and it only took a short while for it to end. Then, it was Grandmaster Xian Ming's turn to give a speech to encourage everyone. After that, the finals officially began. And at this moment, the competition officially began. The head judge gave the order. The atmosphere on the arena suddenly changed. A sharp aura rushed into the sky and it was extremely solemn. Mu Bai slammed his palm on the heavy cauldron. A buzzing sound immediately rang out and spread across the entire square. That heavy alchemy furnace unexpectedly began to sway lightly, and a rich fluctuation of true qi lingered around the alchemy furnace. Whoosh! Mu Bai exhaled a breath of air and began to incessantly use his true energy to strike the pill furnace. Every slap caused the pill furnace to emit ripples. Not long after, 9 dazzling starlight rays surfaced on the pitch-black and heavy pill furnace. The 9-star cauldron finally showed its true power. Boom! Mu Bai gave White Demon Jiangling a deep look. With a wave of his hand, a ball of green flames spread out from his body. The moment these flames appeared, the temperature of the entire arena instantly soared. The audience's eyes lit up, and they let out a loud clamor. It's a heaven and earth obsidian flame. Lord Mu Bai's heaven and earth obsidian flame. Azure Nightmare Devil Flame. It's the heaven and earth obsidian flame, the green Nightmare Devil Flame. So cool. This heaven and earth obsidian flame is really cool. Mu Bai was a genius alchemist from Heavenly Pill City. How could he not have subdued a heaven and earth obsidian flame? A good alchemy flame was extremely important to an alchemist. Heavenly Pill City had invested so many resources in Mu Bai, how could they not prepare a heaven and earth obsidian flame for him? Once the heaven and earth obsidian flame appeared, all other flames would prostrate before it. The temperature of this flame was extremely high. Bufang waved his hand and the black turtle constellation wok smashed onto the golden platform, letting out a muffled sound. The dragon bone kitchen knife spun and appeared, twirling around. With regards to Bufang's equipment, everyone was familiar with it. They were already used to it. However, when Bufang spat out a ball of golden flames, the audience once again cheered. Another heaven and earth obsidian flame. Buzz! The moment the 10,000 bestial flames appeared, the unique aura of a heaven and earth obsidian flame permeated the air. Mu Bai's azure nightmare devil flame was not to be outdone. At this moment, the entire arena seemed to have been divided into two parts. One part belonged to the 10,000 bestial flames, and the other belonged to the azure nightmare devil flame. Mu Bai glanced at Bufang. The confrontation between two heaven and earth obsidian flames was always exciting. All of a sudden, Bufang and Mu Bai froze and turned their heads to look. There was a unique aura emitting from that direction. It was as though a ferocious beast that had been hibernating for a long time had awakened. White Demon Jiangling laughed. She raised her palm, and a ball of deep green flames burned. It was extremely quiet, but the air seemed to be distorted by the heat. Crackle! The two camps on the arena were suddenly torn apart. The deep green radiance forcefully tore open a space, causing the arena to be in a tripartite state. A heaven and earth obsidian flame. I have one too. White Demon Jiangling's eyes revealed a hint of madness. She glanced at Bufang, then at Mu Bai, and the corners of her mouth curled up. In the next instant, the green flame shone brightly, and its aura surged. It seemed to be suppressing the 10,000 bestial flames and the azure nightmare devil flame. The audience sucked in a breath of cold air. This was going to be interesting. It was actually another contestant with a heaven and earth obsidian flame. This competition was going to be exciting. Even before the refinement started, the atmosphere in the arena was already tense. The three heaven and earth obsidian flames were competing on the same stage, and the aura emitted from them shocked everyone. Mu Bai sucked in a deep breath and threw the azure nightmare devil flame into the alchemy furnace. The entire alchemy furnace was no longer pitch black. Instead, it shone so brightly that it almost blinded people's eyes. Buzz, 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 ripples spread out. Mu Bai casually waved his hand, and medicinal ingredients brimming with heaven and earth spirit energy flew out from his spatial spirit tool and onto the golden platform. The golden platform was a special product of Heavenly Mist City. When the medicinal ingredients were placed on it, they were enveloped by a golden radiance. The density of the spirit energy could be seen with a single glance. The dense spirit energy continuously filled the air and soared into the sky. It was as if it had turned into the most beautiful painting, causing the audience to exclaim in surprise. There were so many high-grade spirit herbs. The elixir that young Master Mu Bai was going to refine this time was not ordinary. Could it be that he was going to refine a 6-mark spirit pill? The corners of White Demon Jiangling's mouth curled up. With a flick of her finger, a ray of light flowed out and instantly enlarged in front of her. In the next instant, it transformed into a perfectly round 3-legged alchemy furnace. With a loud thud, it landed on the golden platform. With a wave of her hand, medicinal ingredients that were similarly filled with spirit energy appeared. The golden radiance wrapped around the dense spirit energy was magnificent. It was obvious that the grade of the elixir that she was going to refine was not any lower than the elixir that Mu Bai was going to refine. This was a fierce battle between a dragon and a tiger. However, everyone was more curious about what kind of dish owner Bu would cook this time. Everyone's gaze turned over and landed on Bufang. He guided the 10,000 bestial flames into the black turtle constellation Wa. Bufang also took out the ingredients that he had prepared from the system's dimensional storage. This time, he was going to cook a lot of ingredient. They were so densely packed that it was dazzling to the eyes. Moreover, they were all high-grade ingredient. When those ingredients were placed on the golden platform, The spirit energy that soared into the sky caused everyone to exclaim in surprise. Among them, there was even a huge bear. When Xiongshi, who was in the audience, saw the bear, his heart instantly turned cold. My bear. In the end, Bufang took out a huge blue and white porcelain bowl and placed it on the bronze platform. That bowl was filled with white flour? What was he going to do? The audience was stunned. The flower that appeared at the end seemed to be out of place. What Bufang was going to do, these people naturally could not guess. Even Nangong Wuk and the others who were watching from below were completely confused. However, everyone could confirm that the dish that Bufang was going to cook this time was definitely not simple. All of a sudden, everyone was stunned again. This was because Bufang had plucked the mantis shrimp off his shoulder and placed it on the golden platform. In an instant, the golden platform emitted a dense radiance, completely suppressing the other two. The audience sucked in a breath of cold air. What kind of trash was that shrimp? Why was it so rich in spirit energy? The pupils of Nangong Wuk and the others shrank. Is Old Bu planning to cook Xiaopi? Nangong Wuk muttered, his eyes completely lit up. Old Bu was finally planning to cook Xiaopi. Nangong Wuk had been longing for it for a long time. That adorable mantis shrimp. Who knew how delicious it would be? Mu Bai and Jiangling both gave Bufang a deep look. The corner of white demon Jiangling's mouth curled up, revealing a meaningful smile. Buzz! In the next instant, the two of them casually waved their hands. In an instant, the medicinal ingredients on the golden platform flew into the alchemy furnace. A surging mental energy was emitted from the two of them. Everyone's heart tightened, feeling a little pressured. The cultivation of these two people was really strong. Bufang glanced at them and continued to wash the ingredients at a leisurely pace. The dragon bone kitchen knife revolved in his hand, turning into a huge golden knife. The kitchen knife chopped down, processing the ingredients that were brimming with spirit energy. Then, it cut off a piece of fatty bear meat from the body of the giant bear. After plucking the fur, removing the bones, and washing them, it was placed into the huge clay pot that had been prepared beforehand. Regarding alchemy, the audience did not pay much attention to it. They were all focused on Bufang's cooking movements. With regards to that smooth cooking movement, the audience was filled with curiosity. After processing the ingredients one by one, they were placed into the wok. I got it. Old Bu is going to cook. Buddha jumps over the wall soup? Nangong Wuk's eyes suddenly lit up. He clapped his hands and said excitedly. The Buddha jumps over the wall soup was something that Nangong Wuk ate every day, so how could he not recognize it? The way it was arranged was exactly the same as the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. The only difference was that the ingredients used in the Buddha jumps over the wall soup were different from the ingredients used by Bufang. Did Xiaopi become an ingredient as well? There was Xiaopi's Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Oh my God! He really wanted to taste it. Nangong Wuk's saliva was about to drip down his face, and his eyes were filled with stars. A loud thud resounded. Bufang took out a big lid, which covered the clay pot with a loud rumble. Above the lid was an old Buddha, whose face was filled with an amiable smile. His plump belly was glistening. It was indeed the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Everyone suddenly understood. The moment the old Buddha appeared, everyone understood. If it was the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, they might really have a chance to win. However, everyone felt a little regretful. If it was the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, there would be no novelty, and it would be even more difficult to win. However, did Bufang really only prepare the Buddha jumps over the wall soup? Some people were suddenly stunned. They realized that after Bufang placed the Buddha jumps over the wall soup into the black turtle constellation wok, he started to process the shining white flower that was emitting dense spirit energy with Xiaopi. Chapter 562. What was Owner Bu trying to do? Everyone was confused. If he was making the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, Why would he need flour? The appearance of the flower was very sudden. Everyone was puzzled. They couldn't understand Bufang's actions. In the Black Turtle constellation wok, hot water was boiling. Steam rose from the wok, and when the audience looked over, it seemed as though Owner Bu was shrouded in a layer of mist. Bufang poured the flour out of the wok and placed Xiaopi inside, letting it flop around. This little fellow didn't seem to like the flour. Originally, it was golden and dazzling, but in a short while, it turned into a white mantis shrimp. Only 2 eyes were left, which weren't covered by the flour. After flopping around for a while, Bufang began to knead the flour. As he kneaded, he added crushed spirit herb powder. When the powder was added, the color of the flour became a little colorful. Why was he kneading the flour? Making noodles? Buddha jumps over the wall soup with noodles? Many people in the audience had a strange expression on their faces. They had never heard of this combination before, but it seemed like it wasn't bad. No one could guess what Bufang was going to do. The Heavenly Mist City's audience members were all dumbfounded, not to mention the Pill Palace's citizens who were watching the competition through the projection array. They didn't know what was going on. Although they had doubts in their hearts, Bufang didn't have any plans to answer them. They could only continue to watch the competition with doubts in their hearts. In the distance, the radiance from the 9-star alchemy furnace seemed to reach the heavens. Dense pill energy continuously flowed out from the 9-star holes of the alchemy furnace. Coupled with the radiance emitted by the alchemy furnace, the radiance became even more dazzling. That dazzling scene attracted many people's attention, and it caused many people to scream. After all, Mu Bai had many supporters. Mu Bai's hair fluttered in the wind. He was very focused on refining the pill. This was no longer a competition for the championship, but a battle to wipe away his shame. He had to use all his strength to refine the elixir. White Demon Jiangling would definitely defeat him in the Tao of Alchemy. Mu Bai's eyes surged with fighting spirit. He lifted his head and looked in the direction of White Demon. Suddenly, his gaze froze and he was slightly taken aback. Jiangling's actions seemed to be out of his expectations. Because White Demon Jiangling had already completed the purification of all the medicinal ingredient. The pill furnace was filled with medicinal liquid that was overflowing with light. How could it be so fast? Mu Bai took a deep breath, feeling the immense pressure. It was not only Mu Bai. At this moment, quite a number of people in the central plaza had also noticed Jiangling's actions. The previous purification method had also been discovered by quite a number of people. That method was really too exquisite. Purification was a meticulous work, and it was a very irritating process in alchemy. However, on Jiangling's body, there didn't seem to be any irritations at all. The purification was as smooth as flowing water, and there wasn't the slightest bit of lag. That kind of aesthetic feeling was just like Owner Bu cooking. This woman is not simple. Everyone sucked in a deep breath as their hearts trembled. Of course, White Demon Jiangling was not simple. Her talent was not weaker than anyone else's, and her methods and strength were also very profound. With a turn of the seal in her hand, the deep green flame suddenly flourished, shining brilliantly. Suddenly, she took out a huge wooden box. On the outside of the wooden box, there were actually quite a number of bright spirit stones. Opening the box, the corner of Jiangling's mouth curled up, and she looked at Bufang and Mu Bai with a profound gaze. It's all thanks to that chef that I found out about this method. If you want to compete with me, Jiangling, then you have to see if you have the qualifications. The wooden lid was suddenly opened, and instantly, a thick essence energy and overflowing fragrance surged out, spreading out in an instant. Everyone's breathing seemed to be attracted by that fragrance at this moment. So fragrant! This seems to be the fragrance of a type of spirit medicine, but why is it so fragrant? The grade of this spirit medicine is definitely terrifying. This kind of fragrance, even I can't resist it. The audience couldn't help but close their eyes, intoxicated by the medicinal fragrance, unable to extricate themselves. The medicinal fragrance rolled over, surging violently. Mu Bai and Bufang, who were closest to Jiang Ling, were the first to bear the brunt. That fragrance filled the air, instantly covering Mu Bai. Mu Bai felt as though he had fallen into a sea of fragrance. Boom, boom, boom. That fragrance was like a tidal wave, wave after wave slammed into his mind. Buzz, his mind couldn't help but sway, as though he was about to be lost in this fragrance. Does he have the qualifications to be Jiang Ling's opponent? Is this her method of selecting opponents? On the high platform, a few grandmasters looked at this scene with complicated expressions. Using fragrance to influence the opponent, this method wasn't foreign to them. Along the way, Bufang had used this method to cause countless alchemists to explode their furnaces. However, when this method was used on Bufang, what would Bufang do? This was called giving someone a taste of their own medicine. Would owner Bu fall for it? When the fragrance wafted over, Bufang was slightly taken aback. He narrowed his eyes and took in a deep breath. Very fragrant, as expected, it was extremely fragrant. Bufang's heart was filled with astonishment. This medicinal fragrance seemed to have a dense ginseng smell. It should be a type of ginseng-type spirit medicine. This kind of spirit medicine's fragrance was naturally not ordinary. He didn't think that this woman would actually take out such a high-grade spirit medicine. Bufang's heart was shocked. With a sniff, that medicinal fragrance filled his abdomen, causing Bufang to involuntarily feel a little intoxicated. In reality, he was indeed intoxicated. Everyone was a little speechless as they looked at Bufang, who was squinting his eyes and standing at the same spot, continuously inhaling. It seemed as though he didn't have the slightest bit of resistance and was captured by that medicinal fragrance, simply. Where was his integrity? Jiang Ling was also stunned. In the next moment, she came to her senses and couldn't help but feel a little speechless. This chef didn't care about the effects at all. Even if he stopped and smelled that fragrance, it wasn't a problem at all. This Jiang Ling felt a toothache. Chefs were indeed much harder to deal with than alchemists. As long as an alchemist wasn't careful and was attracted by that fragrance, the spirit energy within the alchemy furnace would go berserk and cause the furnace to explode. Unless a chef was courting death. Otherwise, the wok would not explode. Because the dishes they made, by themselves, had an attractive fragrance. Bufang's intoxicated look made the audience want to beat him up. Mu Bai's appearance, on the other hand, was a stark contrast to Bufang's. His entire mind was highly focused, and his forehead was densely covered with beads of sweat. His face was flushed red as he tried his best to resist the invasion of that fragrance. His bitter look in Bufang's face that was filled with enjoyment simply made people's hearts ache. Huff, huff, huff. Mu Bai's eyes were filled with traces of blood. He gritted his teeth and finally resisted that medicinal fragrance. His mind once again returned to the elixir. Jiang Ling gave a surprised smile. This was a little interesting. Her slender and white fingers began to move. Alchemists' fingers were all very long because they needed to form seals and control the alchemy fire. The flames suddenly flourished, and a thick golden ginseng with densely packed roots appeared in Jiang Ling's hands. With a dig of her fingernail, she dug out a wide hole on the golden ginseng. True energy stirred, guiding the medicinal liquid within into the alchemy furnace. The green flame within the alchemy furnace instantly became denser. Crackling sounds rang out unceasingly. Roar. With a long roar, Jiang Ling's head full of white hair began to move. Even she did not dare to relax for the next step. Forming a seal with her hands, true energy surged behind her. 4 swaying supreme being shackles shot up into the sky from her back. The medicinal liquid within the alchemy furnace began to fuse together to form an elixir. Mu Bai had finally completed his purification. With a slap of his palm on the 9-star furnace, it caused it to tremble. Similarly, It let out a crazed roar that seemed to have exhausted all of its strength. True energy surged, and 3 swaying true energy shackles bared their fangs and brandished their claws behind his back. The atmosphere on the stage suddenly changed, as if it had instantly become solemn. Bufang also opened his eyes from his intoxication. Looking at the two of them, his heart also trembled. He lightly exhaled a breath of air. Bufang's hair fluttered even though there was no wind. In the next instant, true energy revolved around his body, and the vermilion robe seemed to have come to life. It was a bright red that was eye-catching. It was as if a sparrow's cry had burst forth from his body. Behind Bufang, a swaying true energy shackle shot up into the sky. Everyone was stunned. They stared at this scene with their mouths agape. Owner Bu. When the hell did he break through the Supreme Being's shackles? Wasn't this guy always a Supreme Being? Why didn't they see him cultivating? Nangong Wuk's face was also filled with confusion. Could cooking allow one to break through? Old Bu was really mystical. Rumble, 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 steam surged up. Bufang pressed on the Buddha jumps over the wall soup with one hand and exerted force, taking out the enhanced version of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup from the Black Turtle Constellation Walk. The surrounding of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup was steaming hot, and there was not the slightest bit of fragrance. Swish! Bufang waved his hand, and in an instant, countless blue and white porcelain bowls flew out of his hand and were placed on the spacious golden table. Walking to the front of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, Bufang patted it, and the Buddha's body soared into the sky. A dazzling golden radiance emitted from the clay pot. It was so dazzling that it dazzled everyone's eyes. Everyone's gaze was attracted to that place. A dense aroma immediately wafted out of the clay pot. Sizzle. However, Bufang didn't deal with the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Instead, he turned around and started to deal with the dough that he had just made. Many spirit herbs were added to the dough, and after being processed, it became extremely firm. Moreover, after being dipped in oil, a unique fragrance assaulted their nostrils. With a wave of his kitchen knife, he cut the processed dough into strips and placed them aside. Bufang poured out many chili peppers from the system's dimensional storage. Then, Bufang displayed his dazzling knife skills. In just a short while, all those chili peppers were chopped into small pieces by him. After pouring them into the Black Turtle Constellation Wok, a dense spicy aroma arose. Bufang took out the abyssal chili sauce, scooped a spoonful, and poured it into the wok. Bufang turned his head to look at Xiaopi, who was lying on the ground and spitting bubbles. Suddenly, the corners of his mouth curled upwards. Xiaopi felt a chill run down his spine, and in the next instant, Bufang lifted him up. "Swim as you wish, mantis shrimp," Bufang said seriously. In the next instant, Xiaopi tumbled 360 degrees and fell into the boiling abyssal chili sauce. Swish! Bufang also poured the strips of dough into the wok. With a plop, Xiaopi's eyes widened. He jumped out of the wok, and his little legs started to crawl. "Damn it, swim as you wish. You can't do this to a shrimp." Chapter 563. When Xiaopi was thrown into the Black Turtle Constellation Wok, its heart was filled with rejection. That boiling chili sauce, that abnormally spicy abyssal chili pepper, it completely made Xiaopi lose the slightest desire to enter the wok. With a splash, water splashed in all directions and Xiaopi's body shot out from the wok. Its golden body seemed to be covered in the chili sauce. Gurgle, gurgle. The heaven and earth obsidian flame burned underneath, causing the chili sauce in the Black Turtle Constellation Wok to boil. In the distance, Mu Bai and White Demon Jiang Ling were both stunned. When the lid of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup was opened, the unique fragrance of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup completely permeated the air. It enveloped his nose and caused his face to become a little distorted. His strong willpower supported him and prevented him from getting lost in the fragrance. Mu Bai's heart was bitter. These two shameless fellows actually took turns to spread the fragrance. Were they trying to force him, Mu Bai, to explode his furnace? This was too much. White Demon Jiangling's body trembled. True energy gushed out from her hands and she continuously slapped the alchemy furnace. Turning her head to look at Bufang, her eyes narrowed and her heart slightly trembled. This is the true public enemy of all alchemists. Jiang Ling's heart trembled and she took a deep breath. The fragrance that permeated her mouth caused her mind to become a little chaotic. The rich medicinal fragrance emitted by her high-grade elixir was actually masked by the aroma of this dish. It was truly inconceivable. At this moment, the audience couldn't help but sink into a trance. The fragrance of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup had always been very attractive. As the most expensive dish in Bufang's store, regardless of whether it was the fragrance or the taste, it was the best choice. Moreover, the ingredient that Bufang chose this time was not an ordinary ingredient. It was at least a grade higher than the original Buddha jumps over the wall soup. The spiritual energy spread out and the fragrance filled the air, causing people to be unable to stop themselves. The dish cooked by the dark horse chef smells so good. I'm already completely attracted. That medicinal fragrance can't be compared to the fragrance of this dish. Didn't you say that you were captured by the medicinal fragrance? The audience narrowed their eyes and were immersed in the aroma of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Some people even started to swallow their saliva. They couldn't wait to try it. White Demon Jiangling took a deep breath. Her true chi fluctuated, and her consciousness returned to the alchemy furnace. Inside her alchemy furnace, the dark green flame had already reached its peak. The medicinal liquid was boiling, and she was preparing to start the final step of condensing the pill. Compared to ordinary alchemists, Pill King Mu Bai and White Demon Jiangling were, after all, much stronger. Their resistance to temptation was also much stronger. Therefore, after they calmed their minds, they began the final round of core condensation. However, Walala, don't jump. I'm giving you a chance to be free. You must cherish it, Shrimpy. Bufang looked at Shrimpy, who was jumping out of the wok, and couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. He didn't expect Xiaopi's reaction to be so intense. It was completely out of his expectations. Shrimpy's eyes were wide open, and its numerous little legs were moving around. The whole prawn was like a spring that kept bouncing up and down from the wok. Its golden body was even covered with a layer of red patterns. However, as it jumped, the sharp-eyed Bufang saw that there were golden dots of light spreading out from Xiaopi's body and falling into the wok. It caused the bubbling chili sauce to emit a unique aura. The red chili waves rolled and spread out in all directions. The audience almost instantly shivered. They widened their eyes as they looked at the chili fragrance wafting over. Again, as the audience had already suffered once, they naturally wouldn't suffer a second time. Everyone quickly covered their mouths and noses, isolating themselves from the chili fragrance. Some people didn't cover their mouths and noses in time, and they were choked by the chili fragrance. In an instant their eyes turned red and their faces turned red. Tears streamed down their faces. He seemed to have seen this scene somewhere before. The head judge's nostrils flared as he stood in front of Bufang's golden platform. A thought floated through his mind. In the next instant, the red chili fragrance assaulted his nostrils, and it instantly smashed into his face. At that moment, there were 10,000 mantis shrimps jumping around in the head judge's heart. Ah! It's this again. It's the chili fragrance again. The head judge staggered a few steps back. His eyes were bloodshot, and tears flowed down from his eyes. He cried sadly, and he laid on the ground. He looked like a wronged child. Mu Bai felt that he must have participated in a fake competition. Why did he feel like he was crying? The red smell permeated the air, and it caused tears to flow out of his eyes. He couldn't stop it no matter what. In the distance, White Demon Jiangling's eyes were also red. She was seriously condensing her elixir. As expected of Pill King Mu Bai and White Demon Jiangling, Under the shameless attack of the public enemy of alchemists, they weren't affected at all. They were still steadily refining their elixirs. These were the true geniuses of alchemists. Her hands formed a seal, and in an instant, White Demon's energy reached its peak. Her white hair fluttered in the wind, and the neatly swaying chains on her back became even brighter. Boom, boom, boom. A wave of invisible energy rippled out continuously. That alchemy furnace was swaying, and there seemed to be a bright light shining within it. The dense pill energy had already begun to slowly disperse from the alchemy furnace. White Demon Jiangling's elixir was about to be completed. Mu Bai's elixir was also nearing its end. Although he was constantly affected, he really clenched his teeth and persevered. His originally scholarly face had become a little distorted. Mu Bai felt a little wronged. This was his first time refining an elixir, and he felt so wronged. However, no matter what, he had to finish refining the elixir. Buzz, the 9-star furnace shone brightly, and a ball of dense energy continuously gathered above the furnace. This was a sign that the elixir was about to be formed. Mu Bai's elixir was also about to be completed. The spicy smell that permeated the air finally dissipated by quite a bit. The audience was also extremely excited as they looked towards the stage. The competition seemed to have entered the most nerve-wracking stage. The alchemist's elixir was about to be completed, and now, it was time for Owner Boo's dish to be completed. However, when the audience looked over, Owner Boo's dish didn't seem to be finished yet. The wind blew, causing the vermilion robe on Bufang's body to flutter slightly. That fiery red feather trembled under the wind, and it was like a fire sparrow spreading its wings. It was extremely eye-catching. Bufang was incomparably calm. His mental force constantly surged, guiding the true energy within the Black Turtle constellation Wa. Xiaopi was no longer bouncing. It flipped its belly and it slowly floated above the Black Turtle constellation Wa. Those strips of dough soaked into the wok, and they emitted red bubbles. A wave of enticing fragrance constantly spread out. As Bufang guided the spirit energy within the wok, he continuously poured the crushed spirit herbs into the wok. As the spirit energy swirled, a sweet and spicy smell wafted out. Bufang took in a deep breath. Amidst the sweet and spicy smell, there was an indescribable fragrance. This kind of smell was really irresistible. Bufang felt an itch in his heart. It was indeed worthy of being the delicacy that swept the world in his previous life. Feeling that his saliva was about to drip out, Bufang licked his lips, and he also began the final finishing movements. However, the audience was still a little puzzled, and they looked at Bufang in confusion. They didn't know what Bufang was cooking this time. Could it be a new dish? That's not right. There was the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, and many of them recognized it. Although the audience was puzzled, their hearts were suddenly filled with anticipation. Roar! Waves of energy surged, and a terrifying wave of spirit energy finally spread out on the stage. Mu Bai's hair fluttered, and the true energy in his body surged out. The 3 Supreme Being shackles on his back swayed unceasingly. Swish! The 9 rays of starlight on the 9-star furnace shone brightly, and they were incomparably blazing. It was so much so that the 9 rays of starlight shot up into the sky. It was as though Mu Bai's body had become a star domain, and the starlight was revolving around him. A sharp whistle rang out. White Demon Jiangling's refinement was also completed. A green light spread out like glass, and energy spread out like ripples. Her head of white hair fluttered, and her eyes were filled with deep excitement. Dong dong dong. Within the alchemy furnace, the sound of collision actually came out, and it caused everyone's hair to stand on end. It was as though the elixirs within the alchemy furnace were about to come to life. On the high platform, the few alchemy grandmasters all took a deep breath. Unbelievable! This Pill King Mu Bai and White Demon Jiangling are indeed the genius alchemists of our Pill Palace. One has the Palace Master's 9-star furnace, and the other needs Old Man Lie's spirit-gathering furnace. Both of their refinements showed a strange phenomenon. Although the phenomenon is not complete, it is already very unbelievable. It seems that after this trip to the Heaven's secret territory, these two little fellows should be taken away by the Palace Master. It has been a long time since the Palace Master has accepted new people. The few Grandmasters could not help but whisper to each other, and they looked at the strange phenomenon of Mu Bai and Jiang Ling with satisfaction. The great momentum of the two of them refining the elixirs attracted the attention of many people in the audience. Cries of surprise rang out continuously. Slowly, the momentum of Mu Bai and Jiang Ling's movements calmed down. The light dispersed and the ripples dispersed. Everything returned to normal. Mu Bai panted heavily, as though he had just been fished out of the water. Sweat continuously dripped down his chin. White Demon Jiang Ling's gaze was deep. She looked at Mu Bai with a little surprise. That little fellow who was utterly defeated in her hands had actually grown to this extent? The alchemy furnace sank, and the heaven and earth obsidian flame also dispersed. Mu Bai and Jiang Ling looked at each other and nodded their heads. They prepared to open the furnace and take out the elixirs. However, just as the two of them were about to open the alchemy furnace, they froze and turned their heads to look into the distance. Over there, Bufang also made a new move. Bufang waved his vermilion robe, and in an instant, the blue and white porcelain bowls were arranged neatly on the golden platform. Bufang placed a single hand on the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. With a casual pat, the heavy Buddha jumps over the wall soup floated in the air. Rumble, the glowing soup was poured into the blue and white porcelain bowls by Bufang. A rich fragrance instantly spread out and waves of steam surged out. After doing all this, Bufang turned his head to look at the two people in the distance, and he expressionlessly nodded his head. Mu Bai and Jiang Ling froze. In the next instant, they saw Bufang's palm pressing on the black turtle constellation Wa. Boom! An explosion rang out. Within the black turtle constellation Wak, strips of steaming dough flew out, landing neatly on the blue and white porcelain bowls. The red and alluring strips of dough emitted a faint radiance, attracting the gazes of countless people. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, and a strange expression appeared on their faces. After making such a big scene, they made this plaything? This plaything can be eaten? Bufang took a dry cloth and wiped his hands that were stained with water. Xiaopi, whose entire body was red and emitting steam, dizzily landed on Bufang's shoulder. Its mouth spat out red bubbles, and its face was filled with confusion. Bufang turned his head to look at it, and he smiled. In the next instant, he looked at Mu Bai and White Demon Jiang Ling. I heard that the Buddha jumps over the wall soup and the crazy chili strips are more compatible. Chapter 564. Buddha jumps over the wall soup and chili strips. What the hell was that? White Demon Jiang Ling and Mu Bai were both slightly stunned. Their faces were filled with a strange expression as their gazes landed on the blue and white porcelain bowl placed on the golden platform in front of Bufang. The blue and white porcelain bowl was filled with steam, and a dense fragrance was emitted from it, causing people to salivate uncontrollably. A red and strange thing that emitted a sweet and spicy fragrance was placed on top of the blue and white porcelain bowl, attracting everyone's gazes. Was that the new dish that owner Bu made this time? Why was it so strange? The chief judge was the closest to him. He could only feel a strange fragrance assaulting his nostrils. That smell was filled with a stimulating taste, causing all the pores on his body to involuntarily shrink. His mouth involuntarily salivated, and he was simply unable to resist it. Gulp, this thing that looked like gluten. It felt extremely extraordinary. White Demon Jiang Ling, on the other hand, smiled faintly. Her pill had already been refined. She had enough confidence that she could crush this chef. Whether it was the ingredients or the alchemy technique, this time it could be said to be perfect. She could definitely crush anyone and become the champion of this magical hand conference. She wanted to enter the Pill Palace's exclusive circle of geniuses. That was her true goal. At that time, what Pill King Mu Bai? What public enemy of alchemists? Everything would be trash. She took in a deep breath and then slowly exhaled. Dense spiritual energy flowed along her nostrils as if a white wave was set off. In the next instant, White Demon Jiangling's eyes lit up. They were as bright as the brightest stars in the night sky. My fate will be changed because of this furnace of elixir. Star Pill Pagoda. I'm coming. Boom. With a long roar, White Demon Jiangling's palm fiercely slammed onto the alchemy furnace. Her alchemy furnace instantly let out a roar, and the sound of colliding within the alchemy furnace also dissipated. In the next instant, the top of the alchemy furnace that was sealed on top of the alchemy furnace instantly let out a buzzing sound as it soared into the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Dazzling dark green pills flew out of the cauldron one after another. They were like spirit beasts that had been trapped for a long time, struggling to break free. They were completely unrestrained and released their spirit energy to their heart's content. White Demon Jiangling laughed out loud. She raised her palm and a mysterious ripple spread out from her palm. The elixirs floated beside him, looking incomparably dazzling. Everyone couldn't help but exclaim. This scene was simply too beautiful. Every single pellet circled around White Demon Jiangling's body, like a dream or fantasy, too beautiful to behold. The originally ordinary-looking White Demon Jiangling, under the contrast of these elixirs' spiritual energy, actually had a hint of immortal intent. Everyone couldn't help but be intoxicated. When Bufang saw this scene, he slightly furrowed his brows. The pill fragrance that filled the air was indeed very dense. It was like a sharp blade that ruthlessly tore apart the fragrance of his dish. Amidst the dense spiritual energy, White Demon Jiangling's eyes flashed with arrogant confidence, as though she was looking down at Bufang from above. Her eyes were filled with disdain and arrogance. It was as though victory was already in her grasp. Everyone who regained their senses sucked in a breath of cold air. They didn't know what to say. At this moment, everyone seemed to have lost confidence in Bufang. This White Demon Jiangling was really too strong. She was indeed as terrifying as a demon. The elixirs that floated beside her, each of them had a dazzling pattern flickering on them. Every single one of them was a precious 6-mark spirit pill. How could Owner Boo's dish compare? That incomparably dazzling elixir, compared to the plain as water dish that even had its fragrance torn apart, was much better. White Demon Jiangling raised her white palm, her slender fingers holding onto an elixir. Her eyes were cold and arrogant. The strongest dark horse? The public enemy of alchemists? Merely SOSO. So arrogant! Below the stage, Nangong Wuk's lungs were about to explode. This woman actually dared to be so arrogant. Wasn't it just a 6-mark spirit pill? He believed that Old Boo might be able to kill this woman. Old Boo, you can do it. Use your delicacies to ruthlessly slap this woman's arrogant face. Nangong Wuk couldn't bear it anymore. He directly let out a loud roar from below the stage. Everyone was dumbfounded. This guy really dared to shout. From the current situation, everyone could see that in terms of momentum, Owner Boo had already lost. He had completely lost. It was difficult for a dark horse to continue being a dark horse. Nangong Wan speechlessly rubbed her forehead. This was under the gaze of tens of thousands of people. Did this idiot Nangong Wuk not consider the consequences when he shouted those words? As expected, under the gaze of tens of thousands of people, Nangong Wuk's face was filled with embarrassment. He smiled and waved his hand at the crowd. White Demon Jiangling coldly smiled. This chef was no longer a concern. What she cared about now was Mu Bai, who had yet to open his furnace. After 3 years of growth, this little guy had become much stronger, causing her to feel some pressure. However, to be able to obtain the Palace Master's 9-star furnace, this little guy should not be underestimated. Hence, she still felt some pressure. Mu Bai didn't think that Bufang would lose just like that. His momentum was completely crushed. Even a dark horse couldn't continue being a dark horse. As expected, this woman, only he could defeat her. Mu Bai's heart was suddenly filled with heroic spirit. Bang! On his arm, true energy coiled around his palm like a dragon. With a tyrannical aura, he fiercely slapped the alchemy furnace. A loud explosion resounded. The lid of the alchemy furnace instantly flew off. White steam continuously surged out from the alchemy furnace, and sizzling sounds resounded unceasingly. Mu Bai's eyes were filled with passion as he attentively stared at the alchemy furnace that was emitting starlight. This alchemy furnace contained all of his confidence and faith. This was a gift from the Palace Master, and it was the Palace Master's hope for him. How could he let the Palace Master be disappointed in him? Buzz, the white steam dissipated, and in the next instant, rays of light shot out from within the furnace, soaring into the sky. The buzzing sound resounded unceasingly, as though a curtain of night had enveloped the entire place. The entire audience was immersed in the scene, and their faces were filled with disbelief as they looked at their surroundings. They felt as though they were in the starry sky, and the densely packed dots of light were like stars that were releasing their radiance. Those stars slowly floated, and it was too beautiful to behold. Mu Bai was wearing a green robe, and his hair fluttered in the wind. He gently exhaled. Around him, elixirs that were like stars floated. The radiance was restrained, and they gradually became simple and ordinary. However, on top of each elixir, there were 6 lines that were releasing radiance. The elixirs revolved around Mu Bai, setting off Mu Bai's confident face, which was filled with charm. On the stage, Mu Bai's elixir energy surged, and it forcefully tore apart the sky within White Demon Jiangling's elixir energy, standing on equal footing with her. Of course, the fragrance of Bufang's dishes also occupied a small space. However, in the eyes of the audience, this dark horse chef had already been completely defeated. Hua! A loud clamor rang out. The audience suddenly became excited, and they all let out screams and howls. Many people looked at the extremely handsome Mu Bai, and they all screamed out in excitement. The audience's support for Mu Bai at this moment rose rapidly. The audience did not have a good impression of the arrogant Jiangling, and naturally, they did not wish for her to win. As for the dark horse chef, he had lost the possibility of a counterattack. He had also lost the support of the audience. The audience poured all their support into Mu Bai, and they hoped that Mu Bai would be able to win. There were even some female audience members who could not control themselves, and they continuously jumped up and down on their seat. They covered their mouths, and their faces were flushed with excitement. Nangong Wuk and the others looked around in a somewhat desolate manner. Those cheers did not belong to Bufang. Did he lose? Nangong Wan's face was filled with unwillingness as she bit her red lips. Sorceress and Xing crossed her arms in front of her chest, and her towering breasts squeezed out a shocking arc. She glanced at Nangong Wan, who seemed to be a little sad, and smiled as she said, "He should have lost. Look, the audience is no longer cheering for Owner Bu. However, this is the truth. There is nothing to be sad about. As long as Owner Bu's dishes are delicious, it will be fine." Yang Meiji clenched her fists as she looked at the quiet Bufang, who was standing on the stage. Her heart felt a little uncomfortable. Bufang's frail back seemed so lonely, and at this moment it was as though he had been abandoned by the entire world. No. Old Bu definitely has a backup plan. You guys just watch. Who knows, maybe Old Bu will make a counterattack. Nangong Wuk raised his head and said. Unlike the others who were disappointed, Yu widened her eyes as she looked at the stage. Her gaze fell on the huge clay pot. Such a big portion of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. It would definitely be delicious. As she thought about it, she couldn't help but salivate. Especially that red chili strip. That unique fragrance made her salivate just by smelling it. It was hard to resist. Alright. This woman only had food in her eyes. However, no matter what, at this moment the truth was that Bufang was completely ignored. It seemed as though in everyone's eyes, Bufang had no chance of becoming the champion. At this moment, the stage belonged to the alchemist. Regardless of whether it was Mu Bai or Jiangling, they were both extremely powerful alchemists. On the high platform, the 5 grandmasters also stood up. They looked at each other and nodded their heads. In the next instant they walked toward the stage. After the 5 of them landed on the stage, their hearts trembled as they nodded their heads. It was indeed extraordinary. That was because the evaluation this time wasn't only done by the 5 grandmasters. There were also the 500 members of the audience who were selected to evaluate the dishes. This time, the stage was extremely wide. The 500 members of the audience descended from their seats, and they found their respective seats on the stage in an orderly manner. The judges carefully removed Mu Bai's and White Demon Jiangling's elixirs. They used a professional magic array to crush and divide the elixir into 500 portions. Although the amount of elixir was divided, the medicinal effects weren't destroyed. However, when it came to Bufang's dishes, the judges were in a difficult position. That was because Bufang had only cooked 100 or so dishes. "Let the 5 of them have a portion," Bufang said indifferently. After wiping off the water stains on his hands, he started to keep the god of cooking set. The judges looked at each other and brought the dishes to the 500 members of the audience. They also instructed that 5 people would have a portion each. When the dishes were arranged properly, Grandmaster Xian Ming's gaze swept across the audience and he coldly said, "The evaluation of the final competition of the Magical Hand Conference starts now. The first portion, contestant Mu Bai's work, the 6-mark nebula pill. Begin the evaluation." Chapter 565. Following Grandmaster Xian Ming's order, the entire audience cheered. Those who weren't chosen looked at those who were. Their eyes were filled with envy and jealousy. To be able to appraise such an elixir, that was a great opportunity. The value of that elixir was considerable. How could it be so easily eaten on a normal day? In an instant, the mood of the audience was filled with excitement. The faces of those spectators who were chosen were filled with smiles. This was a 6-mark spirit pill. Eating one would bring indescribable benefits to one's body. Furthermore, this was a spirit pill refined by Pill King Mu Bai. It was priceless. Grandmaster Xian Ming swept his gaze across the audience and nodded his head. Then, his gaze landed on the complete spirit pill in front of him. That spirit pill was perfectly round and emitted an azure radiance. The fragrance of the pill constantly spread out, stirring his nose. On the surface of the elixir, there were 6 golden lines that shone densely, wrapping around the elixir. In the distance, Mu Bai quietly stood there. His eyes were filled with confidence and the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. His green robes made him look extremely scholarly. Grandmaster Xian Ming stretched out his hand and picked up the elixir. A warm feeling spread through his fingers and entered his body. There was a faint electric shock, causing Grandmaster Xian Ming's heart to skip a beat. It seemed pretty good. After placing the elixir in his mouth, a wave of spiritual energy instantly rushed into the sky. Grandmaster Xian Ming and the other grandmasters around him widened their eyes. It was as if spiritual energy was being released from their mouths and noses. In the next instant, the few grandmasters closed their eyes and enjoyed the nourishment of the elixir's spiritual energy. The spectators were in a similar state. After they consumed the medicinal powder, the energy in their bodies boiled for a short period of time, causing their minds to surge violently. In an instant, the entire scene was silent. The audience looked at the postures of the judges, and they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The atmosphere instantly became a little tense. After being silent for a long time, someone slowly opened his eyes and let out a long breath. In the next instant, a commotion broke out. The audience members were full of praises as they looked at Mu Bai in surprise. As expected of Pill King Mu Bai, this 6-mark spirit pill was indeed not ordinary. The judges were extremely excited, and they couldn't wait for Mu Bai to become the champion. They really couldn't imagine what kind of 6-mark spirit pill could surpass Mu Bai's. In the eyes of the audience, both Bufang and Jiang Ling had lost. Their dishes and elixirs didn't even need to be appraised. The 5 alchemy grandmasters slowly opened their eyes. Silence, keep your opinions to yourselves. Next, we will begin to evaluate Jiang Ling's pill. 6-mark spiritual pill, 10,000 elephant pill. The knowledge of an alchemy grandmaster was naturally not something that the audience could compare to. After eating Mu Bai's elixir, they could not help but furrow their brows. They were not that optimistic. Mu Bai himself was also stunned. He did not expect the alchemy grandmasters to have such expressions. Could it be that what he had refined was not good enough? The noisy audience quietened down again, but the excitement on their faces did not dissipate. He was also looking forward to Jiang Ling's pills. After all, when this pill came out of the furnace, the phenomenon wasn't any weaker than young Master Mu Bai's phenomenon, therefore, the Wanxiang pill must be extraordinary. The audience was the first to consume the medicinal powder. As soon as the medicinal powder entered their mouths, the spectators were all stunned. Their bodies stiffened and the disbelief in their eyes became more and more intense. What a dense spiritual energy, what a terrifying medicinal effect! The taste of young Master Mu Bai's spirit pill in my mouth was actually diluted in an instant. What a terrifying spirit pill! It's simply the peak of a 6-mark spirit pill. Do you guys feel the spiritual energy boiling in your body? Compared to young Master Mu Bai's elixir, this medicinal effect is even more terrifying. The spectators all looked at each other and saw the disbelief in each other's eyes. Grandmaster Xian Ming and the others also consumed the elixir. Their brows instantly twitched and true energy seemed to be emitting from the pores on their bodies. They exclaimed in their hearts and opened their eyes to look at Jiang Ling, who was in the distance. Jiang Ling proudly and elegantly nodded her head at the few grandmasters. That confidence caused the expressions of the 5 alchemy grandmasters to change. The noisy audience gradually quietened down. They seemed to have realized that something was wrong with the situation. That was because the spectators all had strange expressions on their faces, causing them to involuntarily raise their guard. The ending seemed to be different from what they had imagined in their hearts. What's going on? Could it be that young Master Mu Bai is going to lose? It can't be. He used the Palace Master's 9-star furnace to refine an elixir. How could he lose? Hiss hiss hiss. Is young Master Mu Bai going to lose again? I thought that he would be able to take revenge. The spectators all started to whisper amongst themselves. Mu Bai's complexion instantly turned pale. Bufang looked at him in confusion. As if sensing Bufang's gaze, Mu Bai's face turned ugly. His face was devoid of blood. I might lose, Mu Bai dryly said to Bufang. Bufang was stunned. Was he going to lose? He turned his head to look at the judges' seats, and saw that the spectators all had hesitant expressions on their faces. The 5 alchemy grandmasters were also whispering to each other, constantly muttering. In the end, they seemed to have reached a consensus, and all of them sat up straight. Mu Bai and Jiang Ling's elixir has already been evaluated. Now everyone can start voting. There are 2 arrays on each of your seat. On the left is Mu Bai and on the right is Jiang Ling. Choose the winner that you all think will be. Grandmaster Xian Ming said. As soon as his voice fell, the atmosphere in the central square instantly became tense. Not only the spectators in the Heavenly Mist City's central plaza, even the Pill Palace's spectators, who were watching through the projection array, were so excited that they clenched their fists. Who would win in the end? Would it be Mu Bai or Jiang Ling? Between the 2 of them, no matter who won, the champion had already appeared. How could they not be nervous? The 500 judges looked at each other. In the end, they all raised their palms and sent their true energy into the array of their choice. Buzz, a strange fluctuation instantly spread out and filled the entire plaza. In the next instant, Mu Bai and Jiang Ling's bodies instantly emitted a brilliant light. A golden pillar of light began to appear and continuously rose up. The height of the pillar of light represented the number of people who supported them. Mu Bai felt his entire body warm up. Because he was enveloped by the light, he was unable to see how high his pillar of light was. His heart was also a little nervous. Jiang Ling was very confident. A smile hung on the corner of her mouth as she combed her white hair. Her gaze was calm. Bufang took 2 steps back. Looking at the pillar of light on the two of them, his brows involuntarily twitched. Buzz, the fluctuation disappeared and the pillar of light stopped rising. The outcome had already appeared. Everyone was silent, unable to make a sound. Mu Bai had lost. Jiang Ling's pillar of light was at least a person's height higher than Mu Bai's pillar of light. Mu Bai's eyes also shrank and his entire body began to tremble. He did not dare to believe that he had actually lost. He had lost again. He had lost again to White Demon Jiang Ling. Another complete defeat. Why was it like this? He finally could not control his own emotions. After his body staggered for a while, he sat on the ground. It was as if all the energy in his body had been sucked out. Ha 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 ha. Although you have grown a lot, no one can stop my footstep. This champion position belongs to me, Jiang Ling. The white-haired Jiang Ling laughed loudly within the pillar of light. Her face was filled with excitement. After lying low for 3 years, continuously cultivating and practicing alchemy, this time, she could finally successfully obtain the champion position. The Pill Palace's Star Tower, she Jiang Ling, was coming. The audience's gazes were extremely complicated. No one would have thought that the popular champion, Mu Bai, would actually lose. It was simply a super dark horse. Even young Master Mu Bai could not win against Jiang Ling. Didn't that mean that the champion position was already this woman's? Everyone let out a sigh. They felt a little regretful in their hearts. I have said before that I will let you all experience the feeling of being crushed. How is it? Are you very happy? Jiang Ling's face hung an arrogant smile as her gaze landed on Mu Bai. As for Bu Fang, she did not even look at him. A chef was already destined to fail. She was too lazy to pay attention to him. Don't be discouraged. Only with failure can there be improvement. The last time you lost to me, didn't you improve so much this time? Go back and train for a few more years. When the time comes, you can continue to challenge me. Although you will never be able to win against me, ha 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 ha. Arrogant. Everyone looked at Jiang Ling, who was standing on the stage and laughing non-stop. They all felt a wave of anger. However, looking at Mu Bai, who was sitting on the ground with his head hanging down, they felt a wave of speechlessness. No matter what, Mu Bai had indeed lost. This moment was the revelry of the victors. Bufang furrowed his brows as he looked at Jiang Ling, who was laughing non-stop and doing her best to display the attitude of a winner. The corner of his mouth twitched as he felt a little unhappy. Hey! You haven't won against me yet. What are you so excited about? Bufang's voice was very calm. However, in the quiet central square, it was like a bomb had landed. Everyone suddenly raised their heads and looked at Bufang. Even Mu Bai, who had his head lowered, slowly raised his head to look at Bufang. This chef still hasn't given up? His dish had already been completely crushed in terms of momentum. Did he still want to continue competing? Wasn't that just asking to be humiliated? There was no meaning to it at all. Jiang Ling was stunned. The smile on her face slowly disappeared as she coldly looked at Bufang. Your dish was completely crushed. Is there still a need to compete? Jiang Ling looked at the expressionless Bufang and said with disdain. She was really disdainful. As an alchemist, there was a kind of arrogance in her bones. Although Bufang had repeatedly performed miracles and entered the finals of the Magical Hand Conference, she still looked down on Bufang. It was all because Bufang was a chef. Alchemists were a noble profession. Being a chef, that was such a vulgar profession. How could it be compared to being an alchemist? Bufang's dish. No matter if it was the fragrance or the spiritual energy, it was completely crushed. What right did he have to declare war against her? How can you tell that I am being crushed? Who gave you such confidence? Bufang looked at the arrogant Jiang Ling with a strange expression. Could it be that just because the fragrance and spiritual energy of his dish could not be compared to the elixir? If he used the stinky tofu to compete, wouldn't Jiang Ling be arrogant? After all, the stinky tofu was so smelly that it was completely crushed by the elixir. You are just a little chef and you still want to struggle? Obediently admit defeat. Don't be hit by the cruel reality. It is already not bad for a chef to enter the finals. You should be satisfied and not be too greedy. Jiang Ling said with a faint smile. Oh, you are very confident. I hope that you can be this confident later, Bufang said. He felt that he had to say something ruthless. From afar, Grandmaster Xian Ming looked deeply at Bufang and took a deep breath. In the end, he announced with a strange expression on his face. The last dish, contestant Bufang's dish. Buddha jumps over the wall soup with chili strips? Chapter 566. Buddha jumps over the wall soup with chili strips? What the hell was that? When everyone heard Grandmaster Xianming's words, they froze on the spot. A look of confusion appeared on their faces. Many people knew about the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. It was the signature dish of Owner Bu's restaurant and its price was much higher than ordinary elixirs. However, what was that chili strip? It was even paired with the Buddha jumps over the wall soup? Why did it sound so awesome? Below the stage, Nangong Wuk and the rest widened their eyes in shock. Chili strip? What was that? Owner Bu's new dish? Owner Bu was actually researching a new dish in the middle of the competition? When Grandmaster Xian Ming's words landed, the entire place was silent for a long time. The atmosphere was a little weird as everyone looked at the stage with a strange expression. The 500 judges also furrowed their brows as they looked at the dish in front of them. A bowl of Buddha jumps over the wall soup and a chili strip, the main point was. This dish was actually going to be shared among 5 people? Some people in the audience sneered and waved their hands, indicating that they would not eat it. There's only one serving and you want to share it? Are you here to make a joke? Some people in the audience looked at Bufang and asked. The others nodded their heads in agreement. However, Bufang did not care about them. He only swept a glance at them and was too lazy to speak. Bufang did not open his mouth, but Grandmaster Xian Ming did. As the judges, you have to eat it. If not, how are you going to give your marks? I invited you here for the sake of fairness. Could it be that you want to destroy the fairness of the competition? Since Grandmaster Xian Ming had already spoken, the audience naturally would not refute him. They all remained silent. Jiang Ling sneered. This scene made her want to laugh more and more. What dark horse chef? He was simply a joke. A bowl of soup and a chili strip. This is your dish for the finals? This is the dish you plan to use to defeat me? Jiang Ling's eyes flashed and landed on Bufang's body. Do you think my elixir was refined by trash like yours? You're going to use this kind of dish that doesn't have any special characteristics? At first, I was a little wary of you, but now it seems like you don't live up to your reputation. Jiang Ling's words were very cold. The more she spoke, the more silent the surrounding audience became. Owner Bu had really crossed the line this time. After all, this was the finals. Even if he couldn't bring out the stunning dishes from the semi-finals and other competitions, he should at least bring out some refreshing dishes, right? How was he supposed to win with a bowl of soup and a spicy strip? Although the soup was Buddha jumps over the wall soup, The main point was still the ingredient. The fragrant ingredients were the essence of Buddha jumps over the wall. Those who had eaten the Buddha jumps over the wall soup knew that the soup was important, but the ingredients were more important. Those spirit beast meat, those spirit herbs, you just took out the soup and paired it with a spicy strip that I don't know how it tastes. Wasn't he just looking to lose? In the face of the distrust in the eyes of the audience, Bufang was still so indifferent. Crazy chili strips was a dish rewarded by the system. It was a functional dish like Rampage Ramen, a dish that could be used to set up a gourmet array. Compared to Rampage Ramen, it had a better texture and was more convenient to use. Although Bufang came to the competition with the mentality of trying it out, the fact that he took out the chili strips showed that he had a lot of confidence in them. The power of the chili strips wasn't something an ordinary person could imagine. Perhaps before eating it, one would ignore it. However, after eating it once, the unique texture and taste would linger in one's mind, making it unforgettable. The next time they smelled the sweet and spicy taste of the chili strips, their mouths would involuntarily salivate and their hearts would yearn for it. This was just an ordinary chili strip. Bufang didn't know how terrifying the power of the crazy chili strips was, but he was sure that the system's product was definitely of the highest quality. As such, Bufang had a sympathetic attitude towards the disdainful audience. These people didn't even know what they were about to face. Alright, let's not talk too much. Let the appraisal begin. Grandmaster Xian Ming sucked in a deep breath and stopped the crowd's discussion. He also stopped Jiang Ling from mocking Bufang. Jiang Ling was very confident. She felt that the championship was already in her bag. A chef wasn't a threat at all. Furthermore, the dishes in the competition had no chance of winning against her elixir. Originally, she wanted the chef to admit defeat. Since he wanted to seek humiliation, she would let him seek for it. The 5 grandmasters looked at each other. There wasn't the disdain in their eyes. Instead, there was a solemn expression. They were very clear of how terrifying Bufang's culinary skills were. Since it was the finals, no matter how big his heart was, he wouldn't use some trash dishes to mess around. Grandmaster Gu He, please. Grandmaster Xian Ming looked at the smiling Gu He and said with a smile. Gu He's eyebrows twitched and he nodded his head. He used his chopsticks to pick up the chili strip. However, before he could pick it up, he was interrupted by Bufang. This chili strip, please eat it with your hands, Bufang said in a serious tone. Everyone was stunned. Another dish that had to be eaten with his hands? Alright, let's eat it with my hands. Grandmaster Gu, he looked deeply at Bufang. With a smacking sound, he threw away his chopsticks and used 2 of his fingers to pick up the chili strip. A unique sweet and spicy taste assaulted his nostrils. The chili strip was scarlet red, and it was covered with red chili juice. It was incomparably bright. Could this thing really be eaten? Grandmaster Gu, he suddenly felt a little apprehensive. He felt that this thing was poisonous. It didn't seem like something delicious at all. Don't worry, eat it, Bufang said. Grandmaster Gu, he stroked his beard. In the end, he opened his mouth and bit down on the chili strip. This chili strip was filled with chewiness. In an instant, a sweet and spicy taste burst forth in Grandmaster Gu He's mouth. There was a hint of sweetness in the spiciness and a hint of saltiness in the sweetness. It was unique and strange. After chewing for a while, Grandmaster Gu He's eyes slowly widened. He couldn't stop his mouth from chewing. With a gulp, he swallowed the chili strip into his stomach. In an instant, it was as if a ball of fire had entered his stomach. His entire stomach became warm, as though it was on fire. This Grandmaster Gu He was shocked. He felt as though his meridians were burning at this moment. The speed at which his true energy circulated became extremely fast. Beep beep beep. White gas spurted out from his nostrils. Grandmaster Gu He's face was flushed red. Hiss hiss. It's a little spicy. Grandmaster Gu He nodded his head at the people around him. Then, he took another bite of the chili strip and started to chew it. The eyes of the remaining alchemy grandmasters lit up. That old man Gu He's expression. It was so familiar. The few of them revealed a meaningful smile. In the next instant they all took a bite of the chili strip. Rumble. The few grandmasters widened their eyes at the same time. Their faces turned red and white gas spurted out from their nostrils. Slurp slurp on the stage, the 5 grandmasters ate until their lips turned red. They were covered in oil and their hands were covered in grease. Their faces were filled with excitement and white gas spurted out from their nostrils. They simply couldn't stop eating. As they ate, the aura on their bodies increased at a speed visible to the naked eye. True energy chains swayed behind each of them. Swish, however, what caused everyone to be horrified was that the genuine chi chains behind every alchemy master seemed to have undergone a very strange phenomenon. For example, Grandmaster Xian Ming. The true energy chains behind him actually reached 6? What the heck? Wasn't a divine physique echelon supposed to break through 5 supreme being shackles? Where did 6 come from? Was this heaven-defying? Awesome! Grandmaster Gu, he finished the chili strip in his hand. He had a reluctant expression on his face as he licked the finger that was holding the chili strip. Only after licking the chili strip clean did he reluctantly let go of it. His gaze landed on the thick soup containing the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Grandmaster Gu he had tasted the Buddha jumps over the wall soup before, so he didn't have much expectations for it. However, he still picked it up and drank a mouthful. After one mouthful, his body stiffened. In the next instant, he took another mouthful, and another mouthful, and, the last mouthful, he raised the bowl up high and shook it fiercely. He couldn't let go of even the last drop. Looking at the way the grandmasters ate, the audience was stunned. This seemed to be different from what they had imagined. This dish, wasn't it trash? The 500 judges were also stunned. In the next instant they also started to taste the dish. Because there were 5 portions of the dish, the first person ate it and passed it to the second person. The 5 of them gathered at the same spot. Soon, the judges started to eat. Oh, this is the so-called chili strip? The texture is really unique. There's even a sweet taste. It's so sweet that it reaches my heart. Slurp slurp. Not bad, not bad. As expected of the dark horse chef. This chili strip is really delicious. It's so spicy that my nose is sweating. Let me take another mouthful. Wait a moment. The judges said as they ate. Their faces were flushed, and their nostrils flared. The true energy shackles behind them swayed. They felt as though their strength had increased by a lot at this moment. This chili strip could actually increase one's cultivation? It was really unbelievable. One of the judges broke through on the spot. His body was filled with true energy, and 2 true energy shackles swayed behind him. His nostrils were spewing hot air, and his eyes were wide open. F***CK. Another mouthful. Don't fight with me. Fight your sister. It's my turn, okay? Can't you be more reasonable? Let me eat first. I promise I'll only take 1 mouthful. The judges went crazy. The 5 of them fought over a chili strip. That scene was a mess. The judges didn't expect that there would be a fight over the chili strip. Wasn't it just a chili strip? All of a sudden, true energy surged on the stage. One of the audience members, whose chili strip was snatched away, was furious. He directly released his cultivation and attacked that person. The audience and the spectator stands were all dumbfounded. Why did they start fighting? In the distance, the confidence on Jiang Ling's face slowly disappeared. Gradually, it was replaced with seriousness. Mu Bai sat on the ground and looked at the messy scene. His eyes slowly narrowed. Dong 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 dong, all of a sudden, the audience members, who had finished drinking the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, slammed their blue and white porcelain bowls on the table. Everyone felt incomparably comfortable. In the next instant, everyone looked at Bufang with blazing eyes. What 10,000 elephant pill? What star cloud pill? In front of the chili strip, they were all trash. The chili strip was invincible. Chapter 567. The scene turned chaotic and the judges were dumbfounded. They didn't expect such a thing to happen. Didn't that person say that he wouldn't eat this dish anymore? Why was he fighting over it so happily? Also, that woman in the distance, couldn't she be a little more reserved? She was on the stage with so many people watching. Couldn't she maintain her image? The judges felt a headache coming on and they quickly tried to maintain order. Finally, the scene was stabilized and the Buddha jumps over the wall soup and chili strips were distributed in an orderly manner. For a moment, the true energy on the stage surged violently, and everyone's aura showed a very considerable increase and enhancement. The corners of Bufang's mouth curled upwards, and he revealed a satisfied smile. This was the power of the chili strip. It was a dish that made you want to eat it. Jiang Ling and Mu Bai, who were in the distance, had faces full of disbelief. This situation was beyond their expectations. Wasn't the fragrance and spiritual energy of Bufang's dish completely suppressed by their elixirs? Why was there such a crazy situation? That's right, it was crazy. The scene of so many people fighting over the chili strip could be described as crazy and unbelievable. A group of people was actually fighting over a chili strip in front of so many people. One had to know that they were on the stage and the projection array was still activated. The scene was being broadcasted to the entire Pill Palace. These people were going to be famous. Owner Boo, give me another chili strip. I beg you. Owner Boo, please cook me another chili strip. I can't take it anymore. Chili strip. I want chili strips. I want delicious chili strips. After eating the chili strip and drinking the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, the eyes of the judges suddenly turned to look at Bufang. Their eyes shone brightly like a lamp in the dark night. All of them stared at Bufang and said impatiently, "Hiss hiss hiss, what was going on?" The audience was dumbfounded. Wasn't it just a chili strip? Was it really that delicious? They couldn't even stop eating? Was that ugly thing really that delicious? Those who hadn't eaten the spicy strip before wouldn't be able to understand the allure of the spicy strip. That kind of heart-wrenching feeling caused the eyes of all the judges to turn red. It seemed that if Bufang did not agree to their conditions, they would fight to the death with Bufang. The referees were dumbfounded again. They suddenly felt a headache coming on. This dark horse chef. As expected, he was starting to stir up trouble again. It was already the finals. Couldn't he just finish the competition peacefully? With the help of the judges, the audience members calmed down and did not fight with Bufang. Do you guys want to eat spicy strips? Sure. After the finals, you can buy it from the Cloud Mist restaurant. Remember, first come, first served. Bufang looked at the group of people and the corners of his mouth curled up. In the next instant, he took out a chili strip from the system's dimensional storage and took a bite. Slurp slurp, asterisk gulp, asterisk. The group of people stared at Bufang. When they saw him bite the chili strip and tell them to buy it, they felt a deep pain in their hearts. Where was this guy's moral integrity? However, when they saw Bufang eat the chili strip until his mouth was red and oily, the audience members couldn't help but laugh. What a dilemma! Just when Bufang was eating with relish, a figure suddenly appeared behind him. Bufang was stunned. With a chili strip in his mouth, he turned around and saw a cold and elegant face. It was the expressionless Yu. Bufang, I want to eat it. Yu's eyes lit up as she looked at the chili strip in Bufang's mouth. She stuck out her tongue and licked her red lips. Slurp slurp, Bufang raised his eyebrows and his mouth moved. He stuffed the chili strip into his mouth and looked at Yu with vigilance. He was really afraid that this woman would pounce on him and snatch the chili strip from his mouth. Fortunately, I secretly kept a few strips after I finished cooking it. Bufang muttered in a low voice. He took out a chili strip from the system dimensional storage and handed it to you. Nethery pouted and happily received the spicy strip. She took a big bite, and in the next moment, her black eyes lit up with a dazzling light. In the distance, the audience members looked at this scene with hidden bitterness. There was obviously a chili strip. Why didn't he take it out? This guy really didn't have any moral integrity. Boom. The 5 Grandmasters started to retract their auras. Grandmaster Xian Ming's hair fluttered in the wind and the 6th Supreme Being's shackles on his back swayed. In the end, the 6th shackle started to dissipate. The limit of the human body was to break through 5 Supreme Being shackles. The appearance of the 6th shackle did not conform to the laws of heaven and earth. Naturally, it would not exist in this world for long. Grandmaster Xian Ming's cultivation had not broken through. However, he was much stronger than before. The other Grandmasters were in a similar situation. Some of them did not break through after their cultivation quietened down. However, they also obtained a lot of growth. There were also some who broke through a realm. This was simply unbelievable. The 5 Grandmasters looked at Bufang, whose mouth was bulging and chewing nonstop. They took a deep breath. It seemed like there was no longer any suspense in this competition. They did not think that this ordinary-looking dish, which could not be compared to Jiang Ling's elixir, would actually have such a terrifying effect and taste. As expected, dishes and elixirs were different. One could not use elixirs to judge dishes. Who knew what kind of terrifying taste and effect a dish that did not have any special characteristics would have? Just like the stinky tofu from before. It was so smelly that it had no friends, but it actually tasted so delicious. Jiang Ling was stunned on the spot. The confidence on her face gradually disappeared. She felt that the ending had exceeded her expectations. Mu Bai sat on the ground and suddenly, he laughed softly. What are you laughing at? Jiang Ling turned her head and coldly looked at Mu Bai. Although Mu Bai's face was pale, his smile was still very gentle. I am laughing at you for being too confident. Bufang has created so many miracles in this competition. You actually underestimated him. Oh no, not only you, we all underestimated him. All of us were wrong. That guy is a monster. We should not judge him based on common sense. Isn't it just a dish? We still don't know who will win. Jiang Ling clenched her teeth. Her white hair fluttered in the wind and a trace of seriousness appeared in her eyes. Mu Bai shook his head and looked at Bufang in the distance. He suddenly felt that the current Bufang was like a dazzling radiance. That appearance seemed familiar. It was just like when he met the Pill Palace's master. Mu Bai was stunned. Bufang actually gave him the feeling that he was the Pill Palace's master? How could this be possible? The Pill Palace's master was in existence at the Divine Soul Realm. His cultivation was unfathomable and his alchemy skills were even more divine. How could a chef like Bufang compare to him? Cough cough. Alright, everyone, quiet down. Since the last item has been appraised, let us begin the judging. The rules are the same as before. The array on the left is Jiang Ling's 10,000 elephant pill, while the array on the right is Bufang's Buddha jumps over the wall soup with chili strip. Choose whoever you think should win. Grandmaster Xian Ming felt the energy in his body and took a deep breath. He looked deeply at Bufang and said. The hearts of the audience trembled. Their gazes landed on the stage and on the young man whose mouth was stuffed. The young man was wearing a red and white vermilion robe. It was like a burning flame, adding to his handsomeness. Now or choose. Grandmaster Xian Ming suddenly said. In an instant, the 500 judges' eyes lit up. They all revolved their true energy and activated the array in front of them. A buzzing sound resounded. Rays of light shot out from their array and gathered at the position where Bufang and Jiang Ling were. Jiang Ling's gaze was fixed on Bufang. Or rather, she was staring at the golden light surrounding Bufang's body. In the next instant, her pupils constricted and her eyes were filled with disbelief. The audience in the spectators' stands went into an uproar. They all stood up, widened their eyes, and sucked in a deep breath. The 5 grandmasters were also stunned. Their expressions became strange, and they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Below the stage, Nangong Wuk's nostrils flared, and he had an incomparably shocked expression on his face. Nangong Wan and Yang Meiji were also dumbfounded. Everyone present was shocked. In other words, other than Bufang, who was engulfed by the golden light, who was chewing on his chili strip, and Yu, who was standing beside Bufang, who was happily eating her chili strip, everyone else looked as though they had seen a ghost. Rays of light shot into the sky and the golden light was dazzling. That dazzling and eye-catching light caused everyone to subconsciously squint their eyes. Jiang Ling's chest heaved up and down. Her eyes widened as she looked at the dazzling golden light pillar that shot into the sky from Bufang's body. That light pillar seemed to cover the entire sky. Even Bufang's appearance couldn't be seen clearly. Around her body, there was only a faint light. Compared to the light pillar around Bufang, that light was like the light of a firefly compared to the bright moon. How was this possible? Bang! Jiang Yu shook her head and the energy on her body surged. It dispersed the golden light pillar around her body. Her entire face was filled with malevolence and madness. Are you all crazy? How could this chili strip compare to my elixir? My 10,000 elephant pill is a 6-mark spirit pill. How could it not compare to a chili strip? Jiang Ling roared at the 500 judges. She felt a burning pain on her face. It was the feeling of being slapped in the face. Previously, she was still mocking Bufang and saying that he would definitely lose. In the end, the light pillar made her want to find a hole to bury herself in. She was roaring and she was going crazy. The 500 judges furrowed their brows. They were speechless as they looked at this crazy woman. Their choice was based on their own hearts. That chili strip was too tempting. Not only did it taste good, but its effects were also very strong. How could such a dish not win against your 6-mark spirit pill? Although a 6-mark spirit pill was not bad, it was impossible for an expert who had broken through 4 shackles to forcefully advance by a realm. However, the chili strip could do it. So what was wrong with choosing the chili strip? Jiang Ling's white hair scattered. She didn't believe it. She wasn't willing to believe it. Grandmaster Xian Ming and the others furrowed their brows. They felt that Jiang Ling was a little too much. Victory and defeat were normal. Why was there a need to be so crazy? I don't believe it. How could my elixir lose? Thinking about that chef's expressionless face, Jiang Ling felt that he was mocking her. She couldn't stand this kind of mockery. Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air came from the light pillar that enveloped Bufang. A ray of light shot out at an extremely fast speed. Pa! Jiang Ling's eyes narrowed. She raised her hand and grabbed the object that was shooting towards her. Not willing to admit defeat? Then try the chili strip. Buzz! With a loud bang, the light pillar dispersed. His robe fluttered and feathers fluttered. Bufang's figure appeared in the golden light. Chapter 568. If Bufang's mouth wasn't bulging as he chewed, when the golden light dissipated, Bufang would definitely look very handsome. It was a pity that the image of him chewing on the chili strip ruined the beauty of the entire scene. Jiang Ling caught the chili strip that Bufang threw over. Her pupils shrank as a faint sweet and spicy aroma surged over. She looked deeply at Bufang, then grabbed the chili strip and stuffed it into her mouth. Honestly speaking, she really didn't believe that a chili strip could actually win against her. How could her 6-mark spirit pill be defeated so easily? However, when the chili strip entered her mouth, Jiang Ling's mind felt as if it was violently bombarded by the morning bell. Her entire mind started to sway. Jiang Ling's face turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye. Beads of sweat appeared on her nose. That was because of the spiciness of the chili strip. She didn't understand. How could such a spicy thing taste so good? The first time she ate the chili strip, Jiang Ling felt her entire body tremble. Her pores opened up and true energy continuously gushed out. Gulp. One mouthful, two mouthfuls. The central square became extremely quiet at this moment. Everyone was quietly looking at Jiang Ling, who was in the arena, watching the latter silently eat the chili strip. Bufang gently exhaled. He finally swallowed the chili strip in his mouth. He hadn't eaten the chili strip for a long time. This kind of feeling was a little nostalgic. What? Do you admit defeat? Bufang wiped off the oily juice on his mouth and said to Jiang Ling, who was in the distance, with a smile. Jiang Ling's body was trembling. She lowered her head and bit by bit. Her head full of white hair drooped down, covering her entire face. Suddenly Bufang was stunned, because he realized that Jiang Ling's body had started to tremble violently. Drops of crystal-clear tears flowed down from her covered face and dripped onto the ground. With a plop sound it broke and left behind a pool of water. Everyone was silent. They knew that Jiang Ling had admitted her defeat. The few alchemy grandmasters all sighed, feeling pity for Jiang Ling. Originally, Jiang Ling had a high chance of becoming the champion of this year's Magical Hand Conference. If not for the appearance of such a dark horse chef, she would have been standing on the high platform, enjoying the glory. Unfortunately, even though she was number one in alchemy, a chef who didn't walk the path of alchemy appeared in the Magical Hand Conference, and this chef had killed her. Since that's the case, the finals of this year's Magical Hand Conference have come to an end. The rankings have also been decided. Grandmaster Xian Ming said coldly. His voice spread out and instantly permeated the void. A buzzing sound rang out. A resplendent screen appeared in the sky. It was the ranking displayed by the projection formation. First place Bufang. Second place Jiang Ling. Third place Mu Bai. Bufang's name was shining with golden light, hanging high above the projection formation, showing off to the extreme. Bufang raised his head and looked at his name. His eyes slightly narrowed, but his heart was rather calm. Mu Bai's mood seemed to have calmed down a lot. He stood beside Bufang. Jiang Ling, this woman, was unable to accept her defeat after losing the championship. Hence, she left first, not even wanting to receive her reward. Owner Bu, do you still have the chili gluten? Can I have a taste? I also want to know how magical the chili gluten that defeated Jiang Ling is, Mu Bai said with a warm smile. Bufang was stunned. He turned his head and looked at him expressionlessly. No more. Bufang said in a serious tone. Didn't you say that you secretly hid a lot of them? Mu Bai asked curiously. I've eaten all of them. If you want to have a taste, you can come to my store tomorrow to buy them. Remember, first come first serve. Bufang's lips curled up. Tomorrow? Mu Bai furrowed his brows. Owner Bu, don't you know that we are going to enter the Heaven's Secret Territory tomorrow? As the top 3 in this year's Magical Hand Conference, we all have the chance to enter the Heaven's Secret Territory, Mu Bai said. Enter the Heaven's Secret Territory? Bufang was stunned. Why didn't he know that they were going to enter the Heaven's Secret Territory tomorrow? How much business would he lose if he did that? Owner Bu, you actually don't know? Mu Bai's face was full of surprise. Wasn't the purpose of fighting for the top 3 in the Magical Hand Conference to enter the Heaven's Secret Territory? The Heaven's Secret Territory was an important place in the Pill Palace. There were many precious medicinal fields in it, and the medicinal fields were filled with precious spiritual herbs. Just like the ginseng spiritual herbs that Jiang Ling took out earlier, there were many of them in the Heaven's Secret Territory. Other than spiritual herbs, there were also all kinds of opportunities and inheritances in the Heaven's Secret Territory. There were even inheritances of experts at the peak of the Divine Soul Realm. The secret domain was a small world formed by some unstable spatial factors in the hidden Dragon continent. There might be many mysterious things in those small worlds, such as the inheritance of experts, rare heavenly treasures, and even fragments of other continents. Any heaven's secret territory was a land of opportunity. The strongest force in the Hidden Dragon continent, the Hidden Dragon Royal Court, was rumored to control an extremely precious heaven's secret territory and many resources, becoming the strongest force in the continent. Of course, this saying might be a little one-sided, but it was undeniable that the existence of the heaven's secret territory made many forces stronger. This was a fact. If one wanted to enter the heaven's secret territory controlled by the Hidden Dragon Royal Court, without sufficient strength, one would not even have the qualifications to take a peek. The opening of the heaven's secret territory has a fixed time. The original rule was that the heaven's secret territory would only open after a few days. However, for some reason, the heaven's secret territory suddenly opened earlier this year. Luckily, the top 3 have already been decided, Mubai said. Bufang was a little confused. He didn't have much of an idea about the heaven's secret territory, but he was very interested in the rewards of the Magical Hand Conference this time. Didn't they say that the rewards of the Magical Hand Conference would be exchanged for crystals? This was what Bufang hoped for. Grandmaster Xianming was in charge of giving out the rewards. He looked at Bufang, whose face was glowing, and his heart was incomparably strange. Other people won the championship for the spirit pills and alchemy manuals other than the quota to enter the heaven's secret territory. However, Bufang was a chef, so it was useless for him to have the alchemy manual. Thus, he could only exchange the alchemy manual for crystals. He placed a big box of crystals in front of Bufang. Seeing how the latter couldn't wait to pick up the box, Grandmaster Xianming felt that the champion of this Magical Hand Conference was really the weirdest. However, seeing that the kid was about to leave with the box, Grandmaster Xianming was instantly stunned. Bufang, do you know that tomorrow is the opening day of the Heaven's Secret Territory? Remember to gather at the Pill Tower on time tomorrow. Grandmaster Xianming shouted at Bufang's back as he walked down the stage. However, the only reply he got was a casual wave of Bufang's hand. The Magical Hand Conference had finally ended. That unexpected result instantly spread throughout the entire Pill Palace. Everyone was discussing the result of the competition. White Demon Jiangling took out a 6-mark spirit pill, but she still lost. Moreover, she lost to some chili strip. That chili strip caused the 500 judges to go crazy, and they started fighting over it on the stage. In the end, even Jiangling was conquered by that chili strip. The entire Pill Palace was in an uproar. The champion of the Magical Hand Conference wasn't an alchemist, but a chef. This caused many people to have some objections. However, Bufang won the championship with his own strength. Many people didn't know what to say. Some of the older alchemists bluntly said that Bufang didn't live up to his title as the champion and he had to be disqualified. That was because a chef didn't have the qualifications to become the champion of the Magical Hand Conference. When Hanli heard this news, a flash of light flashed in his eyes. He stood in front of the window of the metallic building with his hands clasped behind his back. Looking down at the scenery below, the corners of his mouth curled upwards. That fellow was finally going to enter the Heaven's Secret Territory. It was time to make a move. He still couldn't forget about the Shura Tower. Within the Cloud Mist restaurant, Bufang pulled out a chair and sat in the middle of the restaurant. The bronze door was closed and he didn't open for business. In front of him was a huge box. That was the reward for this year's Magical Hand Conference. Opening the box, Bufang saw that it was filled to the brim with crystals. Looking at them, Bufang was elated. These were all cultivation bases, however. After counting them carefully, there were only 100,000 crystals. This caused Bufang to be slightly disappointed. No matter what, it was the prize for the champion of the Magical Hand Conference. Why was it only worth a few crystals? Bufang was dissatisfied in his heart. However, he couldn't say anything. He could only wave his hand and put all the crystals into the system's dimensional storage. The system would then recycle them. Retracting his consciousness from the system, Bufang leaned on the chair and let out a long breath. He slightly narrowed his eyes and enjoyed the rare tranquility. Within the store, Yu was quietly walking around barefooted. Xiaopi was lying on Xiao Bai's round head. It didn't want to see Bufang. This little fellow was still holding a grudge. Lord Dog, on the other hand, continued to lie under the path understanding tree and sleep. This lazy dog always had a lazy posture. As for the little 8 treasures chicken, it seemed like it had grown wings because the food it was eating was much better than before. It was excitedly flapping its wings as it ran around the store while clucking. Buzz, temporary mission. Host, please enter the Heaven's secret territory and search for the true dragon fruit. Also, complete the promotion of the Heaven-grade Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Mission reward, 20% true energy conversion reward. Just as Bufang was about to close his eyes and take a nap, the system's solemn voice resounded in his mind. Why was there another mission? Bufang had just decided not to go to the Heaven's secret territory, and now there was a mission to search for the true dragon fruit. This was definitely intentional. Bufang straightened his body, and his brows instantly furrowed. To be honest, he really didn't want to go to the Heaven's secret territory. If he had the time, he might as well stay in the Cloud Mist restaurant to do business. Yesterday, he had done a big promotion for the chili strip. Tomorrow's business would definitely be very good. Those were all cultivation bases. Bufang really couldn't bear to give up such a good opportunity to go to the Heaven's secret territory. But he couldn't not do the temporary mission, right? Bufang stood up with a headache and paced back and forth in the store. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Yu, who was wandering around aimlessly, and his eyes lit up. If I make the chili strips first and let you sell them, then wouldn't I be able to go to the Heaven's secret territory with peace of mind? Bufang's lips instantly curled up. He felt that this idea was feasible. Yu felt Bufang's fiery gaze and looked at him with some doubt. In the next instant, she saw Bufang pull up the corners of his mouth at her. He turned around and went into the kitchen. Was he going to cook dragon blood rice for her? Yu pouted. She had food to eat again, so happy. Chapter 569. Bufang entered the kitchen and started cooking in full swing. This time, he didn't cook any other dishes. He only made the crazy chili strip. Moreover, he made a lot of them at once. After all, he had to leave for the Heaven's secret territory, and he didn't know when he would return. Hence, he made more chili strips for you to sell. Although this kind of small store's daily turnover wouldn't be much, it would at least ensure that the store would be open every day. As long as the store was open, it meant that Bufang was cultivating at all times. Within a huge blue and white porcelain pot, it was filled with scarlet chili strip. The red oil slowly flowed and a sweet and spicy aroma wafted over. The entire store seemed to be covered by the aroma of the chili strip. The aroma of a single chili strip wasn't that strong. However, when a large amount of chili strips were piled up together, the aroma would be extraordinary. Bufang let out a deep breath. Bufang took a step back and used a dry cloth to wipe the water stains on his hands. He looked at his finished product with satisfaction, and the corners of his mouth slightly curled up. With so many chili strips, it should be enough to last for many days, right? Thus, Bufang carried the blue and white porcelain pot filled with chili strips out of the kitchen. Yu and Lord Go were already prepared. They sat at the dining table and waited for Bufang's dish. However, when they saw Bufang walking out of the kitchen, the man and the dog's eyes widened in shock. Lord Go's face was filled with confusion. What was that? Where was the promised sweet and sour ribs? Yu was slightly stunned. In the next moment, she blinked her eyes and was a little excited. She had eaten chili strips before and the taste was unexpectedly good. causing her to be infatuated with them. She didn't think that Bufang would actually be so considerate and prepare so many chili strips for her. With a thud, Bufang placed the blue and white porcelain pot on the table. He pulled a chair and sat down, expressionlessly looking at you and Lord Go. Bufang, where's Lord Go's sweet and sour ribs? Are you planning to feed this to the Lord Go today? Let me tell you, the Lord Go eats meat. I'm not a vegetarian. The Lord Go's nostrils flared. He was very angry that there was no sweet and sour ribs. Yu, on the other hand, pouted and narrowed her eyes. Her heart was filled with joy. She stretched out her fair and slender hand, pinched a chili strip, and stuffed it into her mouth. She was very happy to eat the food. There's no sweet and sour ribs today. Only this, said Bufang. What Lord Dog doesn't eat vegetables? Bufang did not believe this lazy dog's nonsense. Back then, when there was no sweet and sour ribs, this lazy dog happily ate egg-fried rice. The Lord Go was very angry. He felt that Bufang had changed. He wasn't like this before. He bared his teeth at Bufang for a while, but Bufang didn't pay him any attention. Feeling helpless, the Lord Go gave up. Shaking the fat on his body, he planned to go back to the Path Understanding Tree to sleep. However, before he could leave the table, Bufang grabbed his head. The latter waved a chili strip in front of him. It's useless. The Lord Go is definitely not a vegetarian, said the Lord Go. Munch, however, as soon as he finished speaking, Bufang squinted his eyes and stuffed the chili strip into his mouth. The Lord Go's eyes widened, and the fat on his body shook like waves. However, after shaking for a while, the Lord Go's eyes lit up, and he started to chew. The taste is unexpectedly not bad, the Lord Go said seriously. Lass, give the Lord Go another strip. Yu, who had 3 chili strips in her mouth, nodded. She picked up the chili strip with 2 fingers and handed it to the Lord Go. The man and the dog ate happily again. Okay, that's enough. After eating for a while, Bufang stopped Yu and the Lord Go. He said, your boss, have to go to the secret realm tomorrow. I have a reason to go. As the store's waiter, you have the obligation to look after the store and keep it open for business. Yu, who had 4 chili strips in her mouth, tilted her head and listened to Bufang's words in confusion. These leftover spicy strips will be sold tomorrow. Remember to open for business tomorrow and only sell spicy strip. Don't sell any other dishes, got it? Bufang instructed. Yu ate until her mouth was full of oil. With a roll of her tongue, the fragrant oil around her lips was sucked into her mouth. Her eyes shone brightly as she nodded her head solemnly. The Lord Go continued to chew, ignoring Bufang. Bufang was very satisfied. Looking at Yu's serious expression, he felt that everything was stable. He could go to the heaven's secret realm with peace of mind. Swish, with a wave of his hand, the chili strips in the porcelain bowl were kept. Bufang nodded at the human and the dog, then turned around and walked into the room. Yu stuffed another 3 chili strips in her mouth, and the Lord Go also stuffed 3 chili strips in his mouth. The human and the dog watched as Bufang turned around and disappeared. The next morning, the warm sunlight shone on Bufang's body, making him feel warm all over. He opened his eyes. It was another beautiful day. After washing up, Bufang walked down the stairs. After practicing his knife and carving skills in the kitchen, he started to prepare dishes. The big fire rolled and the fragrance filled the air. Hot air surged. In a short while, the fragrance of the kitchen filled the air, and light filled the air. Carrying the dragon blood rice and sweet and sour ribs out of the kitchen, he placed the 2 dishes in front of Yu and the Lord Go. Then, Bufang started to instruct them about today's matters. After eating and drinking their fill, Bufang took out the porcelain bowl and placed it in front of Yu. Come, the store will be under your management for the next few days. Remember to do some business, Bufang said. Yu nodded her head, holding the porcelain bowl with a solemn expression. It had to be said that when this woman was solemn, she was indeed beautiful beyond compare. Xiao Bai walked out of the kitchen with its chubby body, and followed behind Bufang. Its purple eyes flickered unceasingly. Without a doubt, Xiao Bai would be protecting it during this trip to the secret realm. After all, you had to manage the restaurant, and the Lord Go, that lazy dog, was too lazy to even move. Only Xiao Bai and Xiao Opi would follow him. Of course, if he wanted to take the 8 treasures chicken away, that fellow wouldn't be able to reject him. However, there was no meaning in Bufang bringing 80 into the secret realm. With a creaking sound, the bronze door opened. The dazzling sunlight shone in, causing Bufang to raise his hand to cover his eyes. He looked at Yu, who was standing quietly in the distance, and walked toward the Pill Pagoda in satisfaction. Today's gathering point was the Heavenly Mist City's Pill Pagoda. This was the first time Bufang stepped into the Pill Pagoda. He had been in the Heavenly Mist City for so long, but this was the first time he had the opportunity to enter. The Pill Pagoda was the symbolic building of the Pill City. There were many alchemists inside, and every single one of them was obediently brought into the Pill Pagoda to cultivate, continuously tempering their alchemy technique. The Pill Pagoda was the holy land in every alchemist's heart. It was their sacred and inviolable land. When Bufang arrived in front of the Pill Pagoda, the chief judge, who was guarding the Pill Pagoda, brought him in. With a loud rumble, the heavy bronze door of the Pill Pagoda closed with a loud bang. A group of people came to a secret room. The secret room was deep and the air was filled with a rich fragrance. There were many people standing inside. When Grandmaster Xian Ming saw Bufang, he nodded his head. Mu Bai's face was filled with warmth as he smiled at Bufang and greeted him. As for Jiang Ling, her face was cold. She had yet to walk out from her defeat, and when she saw Bufang, she felt a little unnatural. Very good. Since everyone is here, this old man will start activating the array that leads to the Heaven's secret territory, Grandmaster Xian Ming said solemnly. The Heaven's secret territory is very big, and there are many living beings inside. Among them, there are many genius alchemists from the Pill Palace training inside. There are also genius disciples from the other powers in the Hidden Dragon Continent training inside. Because there are countless opportunities inside, I hope that everyone will be able to find their own opportunities inside. When everyone enters, there will be someone to guide them. If you want to leave the Heaven's secret territory, there will also be someone to guide you, Grandmaster Xian Ming said seriously. Bufang and the others nodded their heads. In the next instant, the energy in Grandmaster Xian Ming's body surged. Smoke and dust rolled in the secret room, and it was as though there was a hurricane spreading out from Grandmaster Xian Ming's body. His alchemist robe seemed to be blown by a blower as it swelled up and trembled. A buzzing sound rang out. The entire secret chamber lit up. At the center of the secret chamber, there was a complicated and mysterious array that flickered with light. That array was extremely complicated. Within the large circle, there were many small circles, and within the circles there were also many patterns drawn. If an ordinary person looked at it, they would feel dizzy. This Heaven's secret territory was much bigger than the one that was opened in the Nangong family's territory. The array was extremely mysterious. Bufang and the others walked to the center of the array. In an instant, a dazzling light shone out from the array and enveloped their bodies. Mu Bai and the others only felt a terrifying wave of energy spreading out. They realized that everything in front of them had changed drastically in an instant. Their minds were in a trance, as though they had gone through a violent tug. The light in the secret room dissipated, and the robe on Grandmaster Xian Ming's body also calmed down. The light from the array also returned to normal. The head judge respectfully handed over an elixir to Grandmaster Xian Ming. After Grandmaster Xian Ming received it, he consumed it. His ugly expression recovered quite a bit. Grandmaster Xian Ming. This time, the Heaven's secret territory has opened earlier. Is it really alright for us to send them in like this? Do we need to report this to the palace master? The head judge asked. It's fine. The heaven's secret territory is not considered dangerous. After all, there are many genius alchemists from our pill palace inside. Among them, there are even quite a few alchemists from the Star Pill Tower inside to train. There won't be any danger, and there will only be opportunities. When they come out of the heaven's secret territory, the Star Pill Tower will come and pick them up. However, what this old man is worried about is that this year's number 1 isn't an alchemist. What will the Star Pill Tower do then? Grandmaster Xian Ming said. The head judge was also stunned. Then, he blushed with shame. Who cares? This should be the Star Pill Tower's problem. Heavenly Mist City, within the tall metal buildings. Hanli stood in front of the window and looked in the direction of the Pill Tower. When he saw the energy gathering above the Pill Tower dissipate, the corners of his mouth curled up, revealing a sinister smile. They've finally set off, Commander Han. This little one has found out that Bufang didn't bring the Netherworld woman or the Lord Go with him. He only brought the puppet from his store into the Heaven's secret territory, a guard said as he moved to Han Li's side. Han Li nodded his head and the smile on his face became even wider. It was actually that puppet that stripped his clothes and caused him to lose all his face. From the looks of it, he was going to settle all his old and new debts together. Let's go. Bring your weapons and follow this commander. This time, they don't have the Lord Go. How can that Bufang stop me? The Shura Tower will definitely be mine. Also, remember to peel off the iron skin of that puppet piece by piece. Let that puppet have a taste of being stripped. Chapter 570. The Cloud Mist Restaurant was a scene of harmony. You walked around the store barefooted, hugging the blue and white porcelain pot. Her mouth was dripping with grease, and her beautiful face was flushed red. She seemed more lively. Lord Go lay under the path understanding tree, burping as he squinted his eyes. Lass, give Lord Go another strip. Lord Go waved his exquisite paw at you. Yu's figure suddenly stopped. Her slender fingers pinched, and a chilly strip flew out of the blue and white porcelain pot, dripping with grease, and floated toward Lord Go. With a slurping sound, Lord Go held the chilly strip in his mouth and began to chew. As he chewed, he burped, and the smell of the chilly strip filled the air. Yu pouted, and her heart was filled with joy. She hugged the blue and white porcelain pot and continued to wander around. As she wandered around, she ate the chili strip. This woman's red lips were extremely bright due to the chili strip. They emitted a rosy glow, and they were filled with charm. All of a sudden, Yu, who was wandering around, froze. Her long black hair swayed like a waterfall, and she turned her head to look at Lord Go with an innocent expression. Lord, didn't Bufang tell me to sell this chili strip before he left the store? Nethery asked in a cold voice. Lord Go burped, and the chili strip floated in the air. Lass, you still remember? Don't worry, eat as much as you want. What's there to be afraid of? Since that kid dared to let you sell the chili strip, he should have been prepared to not sell a single one. Lord Go raised his eyes and glanced at Yu as he chewed on the chili strip. Yu's eyes instantly widened. Really? What's there to be afraid of? Give me another one, Lord Go. If anything happens, I, Lord Go, will take care of it. Lord Go pursed his lips and waved his paw with a ruffian expression. Little Eight, who was sitting on the ground in the distance, seemed to understand the Lord Go's words. He shook his little head, and a trace of disdain appeared in his eyes as he let out a chuckle. A little chick like you actually dared to laugh at Lord Dog? Beware that the Lord Go will pluck out all the feathers on your body and make you a proud and pampered featherless chicken. The Lord Go glared at Little Eight and said. 80 was startled. It flapped its wings, widened its eyes, and quickly ran away, clucking as it ran. Sir, if Bufang comes back and finds out, will he not cook for us? If your sweet and sour ribs is gone, Will my dragon blood rice be gone too? Yu's mouth twitched as she said. The Lord Go was taken aback and his eyes narrowed. That was really possible. With that brat Bufang's character, he would really do something so heartless. All right then. Lass, how many chili strips are there in the bowl? Let's open the shop for business now. At least we've done business before, right? With our sincerity, that stinky brat won't dare to not cook for us anymore, the Lord Go said with a smile. You pulled at the chili strip in the porcelain bowl and expressionlessly raised her head to look at the Lord Go. There are only 5 left. 5 left? So many? Come, 1 for you, 1 for me, and we'll sell the remaining 3. We're really too heartless. When the Lord Go heard that there were only 5 left, he was surprised. How many chili strips did that brat Bufang make? He and you had eaten so many that they couldn't even count them, but there were still 5 left. Sir, what you said makes sense. You earnestly nodded her head. Then, with a pinch of her slender fingers, she casually tossed another chili strip. It was covered in oil and flew toward the Lord Go. In the end, the Lord Go held it firmly in his mouth. You also grabbed a chili strip and stuffed it into her mouth. As she chewed, she casually waved her hand, and the bronze door opened with a rumbling sound. Outside the door, light shone, and a boiling cauldron of voices could be heard. Along with the opening of the bronze door, an uproar immediately resounded. The person who led the crowd was Nangong Wuk, whose face was filled with excitement. Ha ha! Old Boo, you're finally open for business. Nangong Wuk excitedly rushed in, but his voice suddenly stopped. That was because the person in front of him was the cold and aloof Yu. Good morning, Sister Yu. Sister Yu, why are your lips so red? Nangong Wuk looked at Yu and was instantly bewildered. Nethery's face was expressionless as she glanced at him. With a thud, she placed the blue and white porcelain pot on the table. Bufang isn't here today, but he said that the store's main business today is to sell crazy chili strips. Burp. The atmosphere was slightly awkward. After Yu finished speaking, she let out a burp filled with the smell of chili strip. Her face was not red, and her heart was not beating fast. Crazy chili strip? Although Nangong Wuk's expression was strange, his eyes were still filled with excitement. Wasn't that the dish that old Boo used to win the championship? He had to try it. It was too meaningful. Give me one. A 6-mark spirit pill that could defeat White Demon Jiangling is definitely not an ordinary dish, Nangong Wuk said. Behind Nangong Wuk, there were many people who were extremely excited. Chili strips. When they saw the scene of the 500 judges fighting for the chili strips on the stage, it was simply too shocking. That kind of delicacy, who wouldn't want to try it? Sorceress and Xing couldn't wait any longer. She swayed her voluptuous waist and came to Nangong Wuk's side. Give me one too. It doesn't matter how many crystals it costs. Nangong Wan also stuck her head out and smiled at Yu. Yu's face was expressionless. She seriously looked at the 3 of them and slowly opened her mouth. You guys are very lucky. This time, Bufang only made 3 chili strip. You guys can have 1 each. Perfect. Burp. Everyone was stunned, including the customers who were crowding outside and eavesdropping. There were several hundred people here. You told us that there were only 3 chili strips? Was owner Boo a fool? Even if he used his toes to think, he would know that there would be many customers today. Nangong Wuk had a strange expression on his face. If you hadn't burped, he might have believed her. After all, she was the Netherworld woman. However, her burp had already exposed everything. Burp. In the distance, another burp suddenly resounded. The burp was filled with chili strip. Nangong Wuk took a deep breath. His eyes widened as he looked at Lord Go. It couldn't be, right? How many chili strips did these 2 big shots eat? He felt sorry for owner Boo for a second. You don't believe me? Do you still want to buy it? You said coldly. Her eyes instantly turned pitch black, causing Nangong Wuk's body to stiffen. Nethery. Can we not threaten each other? If we can talk, can we not use force? I believe you. If I, Nangong Wuk, don't trust Nethery, who do I trust? Isn't it just 3 chili strips? I will buy them all. Nangong Wuk said domineeringly. 1 for each of us. I am very reasonable, you said. Sorceress in Xing's chest heaved up and down as she heaved a deep sigh of relief. 1 chili strip costs 15,000 crystals. Bufang set the price. He is fair to all, you said. Pooh, Nangong Wuk almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Nethery, do you think we are blind? Isn't Bufang's price on the menu behind us? Chili strip. 1 chili strip costs 1,500 crystals. Huh? You don't believe me? Do you still want to buy it? Yu's eyes instantly turned pitch black. Nangong Wuk was dumbfounded. Why did these words sound so familiar? Nethery, didn't you say it before? In the end, Nangong Wuk and the other 2 speechlessly spent 15,000 crystals to buy a chili strip. When they bit the chili strip, they felt as if they were biting a spirit pill. Their hearts twitched. Blackie, who was under the path understanding tree, rolled its eyes. This lass had been led astray by Bufang. She used to be such a pure netherworld woman, but now she had become so black-bellied. However, the Lord Go was very satisfied. Burp! The light flickered. After a moment of absent-mindedness, Bufang felt much more clear-headed. Slowly opening his eyes, he felt a stinging pain in front of his eyes. That was because the light that suddenly lit up was too dazzling. Have you recovered? If you have, then follow me. Just as Bufang opened his eyes and saw the things in front of him, a cold voice rang in his ears. Bufang found himself in an open-air hall. The surrounding buildings were carved with flying dragons and dancing phoenixes. They were rather exquisite and were made of very hard stone. The ground was carved with the same array as the one in the Pill Pagoda. Where is this? Bufang asked. The person who spoke sneered and glanced at Bufang. Did you become stupid from sitting in the teleportation array? Of course this is the Heaven's secret territory. Where do you think this is? This person was a young man wearing an alchemist robe. However, it was different from the alchemist robes that Bufang often saw. Other than the bright clouds on this guy's robe, there was also a star badge made of metal hanging on his chest. Owner Bu, this should be the elder in charge of receiving us from the Star Pill Pagoda. Mu Bai smiled warmly and nodded at the young man. What are you smiling at? Don't be so long-winded. Let's go. If I can't make it to Lord Huang Fuha's inheritance lecture, I won't let you off. The young man ignored Mu Bai's greeting and coldly glanced at the 3 of them. Huang Fuha? Could it be the previous palace Lord Huang Fuha? Mu Bai was stunned. In the next moment, he was shocked. Oh? You actually know about Huang Fuha? The young man was also stunned. I was fortunate enough to hear about him from the palace lord. Mu Bai smiled. This guy was actually related to the palace lord. It seemed that the top 3 of the Magical Hand Conference this time were not ordinary. The young man thought of this and his expression became much warmer. Oh, since Junior has heard of Lord Huang Fuha, then let's go together. After all, this is an opportunity, and it belongs to those who are fated, the young man said. Oh, I'll have to trouble Senior to lead the way, Mu Bai said respectfully. He was indeed a gentle and refined person. Looking at Mu Bai, who had instantly become friends with the arrogant young man, Bufang was also a little speechless. You 2 should also follow me, the young man said impatiently as he looked at Bufang and Jiang Ling. Bufang patted Xiao Bai's round belly and ignored the young man. He turned around and walked away. Jiang Ling also glanced at the young man indifferently. The corner of her mouth twitched and she coldly laughed. Then, she left. This was a little awkward. Owner Bu, Senior Jiang Ling, aren't the 2 of you coming with us? Master Huang Fuha's inheritance lecture is hard to come by, Mu Bai hurriedly said as he looked at their backs. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched and he waved his hand. Jiang Ling glanced at Mu Bai and then at the young man. She coldly snorted and turned around to leave. The three of them went their separate ways. Jiang Ling seemed to have a goal. She didn't stop and walked towards a direction. Bufang, on the other hand, walked aimlessly. He came to the secret territory to search for the true dragon fruit. With you selling chili strips in the Cloud Mist restaurant, he didn't need to worry about the business. This made Bufang feel a little relaxed. Oh, the newcomers these days are really arrogant. Very soon, they will know how miserable it is to have no one to lead the way in the Heaven's secret territory. Oh right, Junior, are you the champion of this magical hand conference? The fifth elder wants to see you. The young man disdainfully glanced at the disappearing figures of Bufang and Jiang Ling, then turned his head to look at Mu Bai and said. Mu Bai was stunned. Instantly, his face was filled with pain. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.